Welcome, everybody, to Wire2Wire Sports Podcast. I am fresh off the boat, episode 128. I am your handsome host, Gene Walzak, with the fresh cut, looking nice. I'm hyped tonight. To my upper left corner, I got Kent State's own, Cleveland's own, College Cottrell. How you feeling tonight, Cottrell?
Feeling good, man. Welcome back.
Thank you. I missed last week. I was very upset. But it's okay. I had a great time on the cruise. Oh, was phenomenal.
We had a great time without you too, in case you're wondering.
I didn't care. No, I'm just kidding. But in my upper right corner, I got Uncle Shally, Scholastic Shally, man with many nicknames. How you feeling tonight, Mr. Bill Shallcross?
Good, sir. Good, sir. How are you?
You're dominating the bracket, bro. Dominating.
No.
Right now.
Liz is dominating the bracket.
Potential points are, I'm serious when I say this. If Shally's bracket files out the way it should, I don't mean to be this was smart. If it like went, he'd be in the top 0.02% of the country.
I mean, his fine. He's only 30 points higher than me, is max. So nothing crazy.
The max is absurd. Over 1,500 max at the tournament so far is wild. A lot of craziness.
I got 1,470.
What was your favorite? I just want to start with March Madness, obviously. What was your favorite first, opening weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, favorite game to watch? There were so many good ones. I was watching a few of them on the boat because I'm an absolute degenerate. But then when I got home Saturday and Sunday, I got to watch almost all of them. Me and Cottrell were texting through all of them. He's bouncing between UFC. I'm watching the World Baseball Classic. Dude, Saturday night was like sports heaven.
It was. It was. I would say my favorite game of the opening weekend for me would definitely be Virginia and Furman. It was a game where I picked Furman to win, and it was a game where the game was really tight, basically the whole way. And somehow, some way, Virginia just quite literally gave the game away. They turned the ball over. Furman hits a three, and Furman is moving on to the next week. Next game. So I would definitely say that was my favorite one. Anytime you can have one of those lower double digit seeds win a game and move on, that's gonna be my favorite. So I know you guys are probably gonna go somewhere else with another double digit. So I'll let you guys handle that.
I listen. I can't Thursday, Friday. Didn't get the chance to watch it. Shally, what was your favorite game of the opening weekend?
I thought the Michigan State Kansas State game was a great game, pretty much from start to finish. The momentum swings in that game at the end were bonkers. There was a couple times I thought Michigan State was going to run away. Kentucky Kansas State. Jesus Christ, what am I saying?
It was a great game.
It was. A couple times I thought Kentucky was going to run away to hide, and then Kansas State would just hit a bomb three or drive the hole and get an N1, and they just wouldn't quit. And they hit a couple huge threes with under 3 minutes to go that kind of just put the nail in the coffin for Kentucky. That was a really exciting game to close out the weekend to watch on Sunday afternoon.
I can't kid you. My favorite game by far, and it's not because I have $25 on to win the whole thing. But Arkansas beating Kansas 72-71. That game was absolutely bonkers. Arkansas shoots worse than I do. But they can drive the lane, man. Those guys can drive the lane. They get it there, and they play good defense. That was a great game. Them in Kansas. Kansas looked like they were winning the whole game. Arkansas was just creeping, staying close. And then 3 minutes left in the game, Arkansas got on that seesaw with them. Bang, bang, back and forth. Up 2, down 1, up 1, down 2. But they pulled through in the end, and Arkansas is moving on. And I think that creates my favorite game of next round. Arkansas versus UConn that's a really interesting game this weekend. No, listen, we had a lot of madness. We had a 16 seed beat a 1. Now, I've said all year Purdue is a fraud. I did. But I didn't think they would get knocked out by Fairleigh Dickinson.
No.
I didn't predict that one. And just as you would predict a 16 seed, they looked every bit like a 16 seed the next round.
They played pretty well. I mean, they stayed close. Florida Atlantic went on a couple big runs in the second half, and they kept answering. I mean, they were in that game to the last 2 minutes. So I don't necessarily agree with that.
Let's talk about, well, that's fine, but let's talk about a 15 seed that's in the Sweet 16. How about Princeton? And dominant performances. Like, they absolutely shelled this weekend. How about Princeton?
Princeton beating Arizona to some degree, I think, was more surprising than Purdue losing. Simply because, I think we all thought. Again, I don't think anybody thought Purdue was losing first round, but there's a lot of people, that saw the weaknesses in that team, and we saw how they came down the stretch, even though they played well in the Big Ten tournament. Arizona was a lot of people's pick to win the entire tournament. They were one of the 4 or 5, not yours, but I'm just saying. I mean, if you look at the odds wise and the way the brackets were picked by all the millions of people, they were a top 4 or 5 pick to win the entire tournament. And honestly, I mean, Princeton honestly outplayed them most of the game. And when they got ahead at the end, I mean, they played defense, and Arizona's offense looked awful. Like, nobody wanted the ball to take that shot, and that was surprising to me. And they went on, and then I think a lot of people thought, like normally happens, like Gene mentioned earlier, you get these Cinderella teams come off this high, and in the second round they usually lay a dud. And they went out and thumped Missouri. Thumped them.
That game wasn't close. It was 10-point game in the first half, and I don't think it ever got below 8 ever.
No, I mean, we were at a party Saturday, and we kept watching, and everybody's like, like Missouri will make a run, and then like we would look up, and like you said, like it would get down to 8, and then we would turn back 2 minutes later to be up 14. And Missouri never was never in any danger of winning that game. They have an interesting matchup this weekend with Creighton. That'll be very interesting.
It's actually a really good matchup for Princeton because they match up well versus a team that shoots like they literally play very similar games. Creighton plays a very similar 3-point game, and if you can catch Creighton on a bad shooting night, which by the way that hasn't happened yet, Creighton's been shooting a lot. He shot 51% for 3 their second game.
Yeah, I mean, they had a little bit of a scare in the first game, but I think Creighton will be fine moving forward. It's definitely been nice to see this Princeton team move on. Like I said, whenever you have a double-digit seed move on to the Sweet 16 and potentially even further, that's what makes the tournament madness. And I feel like I 100% agree with what Bill said, though. Purdue, I had them losing in the Sweet 16. I wouldn't have been surprised if they lost in the round of 32 and didn't make it out the weekend. But with Arizona's a team that was coming off of Pac-12 championship. They beat a good UCLA team. Like, it looked like they had it figured out, especially, going into the tournament. Like we always say, you want to be playing your best ball in the, beginning and middle of March. And I thought Arizona was doing that. And for them to come out, and I don't want to take any credit away from Princeton, but for them to come out and just lay an egg like that, like, it was very surprising to see.
I mean, they were one of the best offenses in the country, and they went out and scored 55 points against Princeton. And like I said, you watch the last 2 minutes of that game, there was nobody on that team that wanted the ball.
I didn't get the chance to watch that game, but what it looked like when I looked at the stat sheet is Princeton jam-packed the lane and made them shoot from 3, forced them to shoot from the outside. Just looking at the stat sheet, that's all I could read into it. I didn't get a chance to watch it. Am I accurate with that statement?
I think the problem was, I think Arizona was up, 6 or 8 points, pretty much the first half. And I think they felt comfortable and just felt like they were going to run away, and they were settling for shots. And then come crunch time, Princeton kind of really expanded their defense and started making Arizona run a set and run a half-court game, and they couldn't. And they didn't get one. I mean, if I'm forgetting something, I'm mistaken. But the last 2 minutes, I don't think Arizona got one good look that wasn't severely contested. And Princeton had every rebound, had every answer, and went down and hit a huge 3 with about a minute and a half to go.
That was the big thing for me. Princeton was rebounding the basketball at a great rate. Arizona was legit getting, one possession and that was it. Like, you would think a team like Arizona, who has, the better athletes and just more talent in general, they'd rebound the ball better. Princeton wasn't a huge team by any means, but Arizona did not have many opportunities at all to get second chance points. And that definitely came back to bite them.
I fully still believe, the mindset when those games, especially between like a 15 and a 2 or 1 and 16, when it gets down to crunch time, I think all the pressure in the world is on the higher seed. And,
Dude,
and
you've seen it with UMBC.
yeah, and you look at Cottrell. I mean, you didn't watch it, but Cottrell, remember this. Arizona hit a three with about 2 minutes to go that got to them within two. And then at that point, I was like, if they get a stop here, go down the score. This is typically where you see like the
The
smaller team
higher
kind of
seed.
they kind of they wilt and take a bad shot or whatever. Princeton came right down, ran a set. Their small forward came off a double screen and hit a deep three, and that was it. I mean, you saw all of the air deflate out of Arizona. They were down 5, and they never got closer.
Yep.
Hey, just listen. I think the kids go out and can play with house money, and I think they're like I just think they play freer. I think they play freer. They play with no pressure, and you see everybody else clinch up on the other team. That's exactly what happened to Arizona. It happened to Purdue down the stretch. I think that is a definite advantage, I think, for lower seeds in games like that.
I want to ask you guys one question before we pull up the bracket and start breaking down the next round's games. Who was your favorite Cinderella run at all time? Of all time, favorite Cinderella run? I'll start with George Mason.
Yeah,
the run that they went on was just bonkers. Every week it's like, I mean, there's a lot of them. Florida Atlantic was a fun one. Remember the Dunk City lot?
Florida Gulf Coast.
Yeah, Florida Gulf Coast. Sorry. You're right. I apologize. Thank you for correcting. I'm just kidding.
I mean, honestly, they're the two big ones that come to mind right away. Because I mean, they're the most recent ones too. What seed was UConn the year they won it?
I was just thinking that. I believe with Kemba.
I'm pretty sure.
I say 8 or 9. That's what I thought too. I mean, so that sticks out to me with Kemba.
Yep. That was the one. Yeah, that was the one. They went on the run in the Big East and then went and just won the whole thing. That was the one that stuck out to me for sure.
I remember they had to win the Big East pretty much to get in, and I remember Kemba had that finals game where he scored like 30 points and he hit that step back 3 with like 2 seconds
in the Garden
to get him in. So I mean that run they went on between the Big East tournament and the Big
They went
tournament.
like a 6 overtime game on that run.
4
against
overtime,
Syracuse.
I think. Yeah,
against Syracuse. Yep.
I mean, so if you factor everything in, I don't know if there's been a better, play till you die or you're out type situation than Connecticut that year. To run through everything. I mean, that's a historical once in a lifetime type run.
Kentucky had a great run too. I believe when Julius Randle was there, they were an AC. They made it all the way to the championship game.
Yep.
They didn't win it, but there wasn't a Kentucky team that was normal, like a top 1, top 2 seed. Yeah. So 8 seed going on a run. Those are just kind of the two that I remember of late. Outside of George Mason was a special one. George Mason was one. I was younger, so like watching the tournament, it was like, oh, like this can actually happen. Like this is madness for real. So
I'm actually mad that Key Williams isn't on her Key in the Building account because I always like to say Key in the Building. But what's up, Key?
Steph Curry's mini run with Davidson was fun. I don't think they only got to the Sweet 16. I think though, that's when they lost.
Let's break down some more matchups then, boys. I'm ready to look at the Sweet 16 now. We're into the Sweet 16. Can we zoom that in or anything? I can't see. My eyes are awful. I need glasses.
I mean, I can say the matchups if you prefer.
I'd appreciate that, my friend.
All right. So if we're starting in the South, we got Alabama versus San Diego State.
Okay, so I think Alabama runs through San Diego State. Alabama's looked every bit as the best team in the country. It's no surprise. That's my pick here. I think Alabama wins the whole thing. I don't know if they'll be tested until next round.
I'm gonna agree with you. I think Alabama wins. I mean, they look great in the first round, and that was with Brandon Mitchell not even scoring. They looked even better in the second round. They are clicking at both ends of the floor, like Gene said. They are my pick to win the tournament as well, and I agree. I think they look every bit of the number 1 overall seed in this tournament right now.
I don't think they get tested to the Final Four. I'm looking at the matchup below, and I don't.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's the only part I was going to disagree. I don't think they don't have a tough game. I think until the Final Four.
So I agree with you guys picking Bama. I got Bama going all the way to the championship game as well. But I don't think San Diego State's just going to be a walkthrough team. The way that they've played so far in this tournament, obviously, you got to go back home and then come back. But the way that they've played so far in this tournament, I really think that they've built this confidence in themselves. And Charlie, you mentioned it. Brandon Miller has not played great basketball so far. Alabama's been winning in spite of that. I think with a game against San Diego State, if it gets tight, San Diego State is great defensively. Okay. And if it gets tight and you need Brandon Miller to make a play and he's just not on, I think then you get into that scare. I think Bama has enough to get it done, but I think this can actually be one of the better games the next couple of days.
I think the one advantage that Alabama's going to have, Alabama's going to be the first elite defensive team that San Diego State's played in this tournament. And I agree.
That's a good point.
San Diego State has looked very, very good. I had this matchup picked. This is it's going to be a lower scoring. I mean, I think if Alabama gets to the 60s, I think they win. But again,
don't get it twisted though, Bill and Cottrell and Bill. I'm sure you guys are going to break me down and tell me that these teams are way better than I am giving them credit for. But let's not pretend that Charleston and Furman are playing in the SEC or the Big 12 all year. That you look at the Charleston and Furman is who San Diego State's played so far, and then Alabama, and you tell me one of these things don't matter.
I don't disagree with you at all. I think Alabama wins comfortably. My point being, though, if you follow Charleston all year and you followed Furman all year, like me and Cottrell kind of have, and you watch those games and saw how they looked against San Diego State versus how they've looked against everybody else.
How many Furman games did you watch?
I've comfortably watched 2. And on Charleston, I'll tell you, I've watched probably 3 or 4, because me and Cottrell were talking about Charleston for 2 months.
Yeah, I've been on the Charleston and Furman wave for about a month now. I've probably seen about 7 I've seen all of their conference tournament games. They played Kent, so I saw their games earlier in the year. And then with Furman, I kind of got off of them because they were starting to lose some games in the middle of the season. But for a while, I mean, they were like 15-1, 15-2. Like they were one of those like crazy, outside the Power 5 that I thought could be, a 31 team going into the tournament. But
I'll just put it this way. I think they win. I think they win comfortably, and by that I mean I don't think it's a last possession game. I think they're holding the ball and they dribble it out. They're up 6, 8, 10 points at the end. Okay. Matchup wise, this will be a tougher matchup versus San Diego State than whoever they play in the next round.
Okay. Well, you got the next round matchup. You have Creighton versus Princeton. And these are 2 teams that like to shoot the lights out from the outside. You're going to see a lot of 3 balls in this game. This could be I'm not even trying to be smart when I say this. This will go over by 20 points or it'll go under by 20 points. This is not going near the number. No. Like you'll know right away if this is going to go over or under.
Yeah, when this is 45-43 at half, you're going to know it's going to go over.
Correct.
I agree with you. This is, you kind of hit it on the head earlier. These are 2 teams that are very similar. Princeton's probably just a slightly less talented version of Creighton.
Yep.
If both of these teams shoot well, this will be an insanely entertaining game to watch because it's going to be up and down, chuck it up. The other team is going to get it and go do the same thing. If either one of these teams is cold, like Gene said, this has the ability to be a blowout either way. If one of the teams doesn't shoot well, and it's probably over with 10 minutes to go in the second half. But that's a sleeper game that has a chance to be, a really, really fun game to watch.
I'll take Creighton A instead of Creighton B.
I will take Creighton A as well. I'll take OG Creighton.
Yeah, I'm taking Creighton as well. I feel about this game how you guys feel about the first game. I think this was going to be one where Creighton kind of rolls. They win by 15 to 20 points. Princeton went back to campus. They're high on the win so far. I think Creighton comes back and just the more dominant team. I think they shoot better, and we see Creighton roll.
Okay, so I think I remember when we did our college basketball preview show, and I said a team to watch out for this year is Creighton. Creighton has the roster to compete with Bama, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. The next matchup we have is Florida Atlantic, who's been playing very well, great basketball. They're going up against Tennessee, I'll put it this way. I didn't see a team play better defense, more physical defense than Tennessee this entire tournament. I think Tennessee wins this basketball game, but Florida Atlantic is no walkthrough. They've proven that with their 1-point victory over Memphis and then destroying Fairleigh Dickinson.
Tennessee frustrates me, and I'm going to blame most of this on Cottrell. We did our preview show and Gene was on the boat, and I had Tennessee in the Final Four, and you know, I always give my love to my college brother in Cottrell. He talked me off this ledge big time, and I thought about it, and I kept going over stuff, and I was like, Cottrell's seeing something I don't. So I drank the Duke Kool-Aid and then watched Duke come out and just get smacked around by Tennessee. So that wasn't fun. Because if not, I would have all 4 final teams active right now in my bracket. And then I probably would be running away with this damn thing. But that being said, I agree. Tennessee has kind of found their mojo that they had at the beginning of the year. I was high on them, and then I got off them, and I looked at a bunch of stuff, and they lost 6 out of 10 coming down the stretch. They went out the SEC tournament early. Just looked like they kind of lost their mojo, and they kind of lost their heart. And then you watch them play these first 2 games this weekend, and they look like the Tennessee from the beginning of the year. They are elite defensively. They are a top 10 team, defensive team in the country. And then they're efficient on the offensive end right now. They're making the most they can with having, you know, for lack of a better term, their point guard is strictly a distributor right now. He's not a scoring threat. So they are kind of playing, you know, for lack of a better term, they're playing 4-on-5 offensively right now. But they're very efficient right now. Florida Atlantic is kind of one of the big Cinderellas left. They play in a smaller conference, and, you know, that's people always hold that type of thing against those teams. But, you know, that being said, they've only lost 3 basketball games this year. I don't care what kind of conference you're in. The amount of games that you play, just, you know, having off nights with your best players, so forth and so on. To only lose 3 basketball games over the course of a year is very impressive. Kids don't know how to lose; they only know how to win, and, you know, that matters in close games this time of year. You know, they don't get down, they don't think they're out of games. I think this is a very, very close game. Very close game. I think it is. I think it is low to mid 60s. I think that's where you're going to be, and I'm going to take Tennessee because I'm going to take their talent and their experience. I won't be surprised at all if FAU gets to the 8.
I disagree.
Kyle talks about you fell for the Duke hype. I'm sure you weren't the only one. Cottrell, speak on it.
Cottrell's fault.
Well, we had talked about it on the show last week, and I did have Duke going to the Final Four. But to be fair, I also said the winner of the Duke-Tennessee game, they were going to be the ones that were probably going to be moving on in this region because we didn't trust Purdue, and I didn't believe in Marquette as the 2 seed. So we said whoever won that game is probably going to the Final Four from their region. And it's not my fault that Bill went against his own. He went against his own.
He told me that after he gave me like 3 cups of Kool-Aid on a hot summer day, though. Like, big guys don't turn down Kool-Aid when it's hot out. That's what happened, Gene.
But here I'm going with Tennessee. I mean, it's we see that it's kind of, you know, stood true so far with the top seeds already being out from this region. You talk about FAU, and I get it. You know, all credit to them. I don't think they really should have gotten out the first round. I think Memphis should have been granted the timeout call, and we'd be having a whole different conversation right now. I'm not going to hold it against them.
Timeout call. Memphis wins the game.
Correct.
That was a low key great game too.
It was a jump ball, and then they give the ball to FAU. If it would have
FAU score,
yeah, afterwards, yes, correct.
So they were down 1, and it was a jump ball, and Memphis should have got the timeout.
Correct.
I didn't watch the game.
Correct.
I didn't watch it. I was on a boat.
No, yeah. Memphis was up, and they instead of calling the timeout, they gave them the jump ball, and then they got the ball, scored on the next play. And it was a 2-second kind of period. So it's not like a lot would have happened. So but regardless of that, I give FAU their credit. They took care of business against FDU, and Obviously everybody in the country was rooting for them to win. So for them to go out, take care of business, that game wasn't necessarily close. I'm rolling with Tennessee though. I like Tennessee. They've shown me enough so far this tournament to have confidence in them. I didn't have confidence in them before after knowing that Ziegler was out with the torn ACL, but they've proved me wrong so far. So I'll roll with the Vols.
I have a new rooting interest in this tournament.
Oh,
I do. I mean, I'm still rooting for Arkansas because I got the 25 to win 1,500. I don't think that's going to happen. They're offering me like a $90 cash. I'm thinking about it. But my rooting interest is 100% Keontae Johnson from Kansas State. You want to talk about a story, man. This kid turned down $5 million from the NCAA insurance policy to transfer, play a senior year on a Kansas State team that was projected to be worst in the conference. I can't tell you. Listen, I was rooting for Kentucky. I had money on Kentucky. But watching this kid play and watching that entire thing play out, I'm rooting for Kansas State. I'll lose the $25 and be happy about it because Kansas State, I'm riding Kansas State until the wheels fall off. Give me Kansas State over Sparty, who Tom Izzo's doing it again. He's in the Sweet 16 again. Give him all the credit in the world. The guy's absolutely incredible. But I love the leadership. I love the leadership.
You guys were talking about me a couple weeks ago when I said it, and it was now we're here.
We're at Sweet 16. Well, you could do your victory lap when they make it to the Final Four.
I didn't say they were going to the Final Four, though. I just said that they were going to win a couple games they shouldn't.
Okay.
And that's what they
won
did
one
so
game
far.
they shouldn't.
I think actually I had them losing
fraudulent Marquette team.
Agreed.
Okay. If they go out and beat my guy Keontae, I'm Team Keontae. I'm getting a damn T-shirt. Send it to me in the mail. I'm rooting for this kid in the NBA. He's my new favorite player in college. I love the story. Collapsed on the court. College, everything was over.
I don't know if anybody plays with a bigger chip on his shoulder than that kid does. I'll
turn down $5 million. Why?
No, I know, but it's still different than like he outwardly shows it. And he is. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody more confident in the tournament right now. He hit 2 enormous threes in that game against Kentucky to put the final nail in that coffin. I think he's not that he's gonna struggle, but I mean, Michigan State pretty much runs 3 guards, and they're all very good. I don't know if he can outplay all 3 of them. Kansas State plays well defensively. Michigan State's playing well defensively. They're rebounding well. I think this, if you are I don't want to say old school basketball, but if you are, an absolute fan of not a high scoring game, a lower scoring game, that's a battle, scratch a claw type game. This is going to be your game this weekend. I think it has the ability to be the best game of the weekend. I think Michigan State has enough outside of the guard position. I think they get contributions from other people. I think Keontae's still going to go off and probably have a great game. I think Izzo and Sparty are going to get it done. A week to prepare for him. I hate that for Kansas State.
That's okay. I'd like to be on my island. I hope Control picks Sparty too.
Oh no, dude, it's on an island. I'm not bashing your pick at all. I think that's a toss-up game. I think it's a point and a half, or 1 point, something like that. I think it's a great game. I'm looking forward to watching that game.
Okay.
Like that game excites me, but I think Michigan State gets it done like 63-62. Maybe even goes to overtime. That's that type of game. That's how close those two teams are, in my opinion.
Control?
I am rolling with Michigan State as well. Funny thing is that in my bracket that I made, I only had Michigan State going to the Sweet 16. I thought they would lose to Kentucky.
Same.
I think they match up well against this Kansas State team. Obviously, Keontae Johnson is special. Kansas State's point guard is one of the best in the country as well. But I think Tom and company will put together a game plan. I mean, they got a senior guard, Walker, who I love watching play. I think he'll be ready for his matchup. And then, Bill, you talked about their other guards, and then I like Hauser in the front court as well. I mean, I think they'll probably run a zone to try and get Kansas State uncomfortable. And I think when it comes down to it, Michigan State will have that experience. And I think they get it done.
Marquise Noel had an incredible game
He
versus
did.
Kentucky. That step back 3-pointer he hit was the dagger. That was the dagger.
I didn't realize, well, they said it during the broadcast, but he, I guess, very close family friend with like Kyrie Irving. And after watching him play, I could definitely see that. I'm like, he has a crazy handle.
Agreed.
Let's
move on to the Midwest. Houston is taking on the U. Houston is, they looked a little shaky to start, end up pulling away round one. Didn't really have too many issues with Auburn in round two.
Mm-hmm.
Houston 81-64, right?
In the second half, it was like it didn't get out of hand until like 5 minutes left.
Games, right?
They closed well.
Yeah, they definitely closed. Like 6 minutes left, that game was tied. It was like it was very close, like 57-54 maybe. They definitely closed well.
Last 5 minutes of game is most important.
Well, they now play the U. Miami. They essentially had Indiana. They beat Indiana, and they beat Drake, right? They beat Drake.
Correct.
Really? Are you talking about you the best Drake? Which Drake was it?
Drake was the better basketball team for 38 minutes of that game. Miami was
switched the zone and the press, and it was a wrap.
Drake melted on the court. Literally melted. They did, dude. They did. I felt bad for them kids. They outplayed Miami. Miami got desperate, went to the zone. They missed a couple of jump shots. Miami went down and scored every goddamn time and kept cutting the lead. And then they finally went to that press, and then it like all hell broke loose. I mean, like it wasn't even like they couldn't get it across half court. They couldn't get it past their foul line. Like it got bad. Like they were giving Miami layups. And Miami pulled it out. And then I thought Miami for sure was going to lose to Indiana, and they made Indiana look very ordinary. And especially after Indiana's first round game where they look like I was like, maybe I missed the boat on Indiana. But they played two games. I mean, I think it's an interesting games. I think Miami could stay with Houston defensively. Houston's another team that plays great defense. That's what they're built on. Health is a big thing for Houston. This break is good for Sasser and company that are rehabbing injuries. See what kind of shape he's in. I don't think they play till I think Saturday, Friday. So they get the extra day. It'll be real interesting. It'll be. I think it's a good game. I'm taking Houston.
Give me your pick. Houston.
I have Houston in the finals.
I got Houston also. Who you got, Cottrell?
I'll take Houston. I mean, I think Sasser's going to have to step up. I mean, Isaiah Wong's is a great guard for Miami. I think Houston and company, they'll take care.
Groin or hamstring, is that healed?
Groin. It's not all the way healed.
Yeah,
no.
I mean, he aggravated it versus Northern Kentucky.
He did.
He's been playing though, and whenever he's out on the bench, they send him over to the bike. Like they don't want him to stiffen up. So they're managing it well.
He played better the second game after he re-aggravated the first game. So
the next game I think is the easiest game to pick.
Oh, absolutely.
Weekend. I think Texas runs through Xavier. Xavier ran into a very weak Pitt team. And I've watched Pitt a lot, way more than I should have. I had money on Pitt in the Big East tournament. They won me a couple dollars in the Big East tournament, winning versus really crappy team before they got destroyed by Duke. But I've been watching Pitt for way too many games than I should. Texas is much better than Pitt, and I think they absolutely destroy Xavier. I really believe that. I don't think Xavier's that good. I think Xavier is a decent team, but I watch too many Xavier games also because they're in my conference. Give me Texas in this one. And
I like Texas too. I like Texas comfortably. I think it's a close game in the first half, maybe. Again, when you give these coaches 4 or 5 days to prep, I mean, it's hard to just come out and run your normal offense without the teams knowing certain things you're going to do. But that being said, like Gene said, I think Texas is the way more talented team. Xavier, I don't want to say they're a try-hard team, but I think they're a little bit of an overachiever team. I think the second half, I think Texas is going to be too much. I think Texas pulls away with 7-8 minutes to go.
Agreed. I got Texas big here. I think Xavier has been very fortunate with their matchup so far. I mean, their first round game against Kennesaw State, they gave them everything that they could handle. And then, like you said, Gene, Pitt was very much overachievers. Like
100%.
So I like Texas, and I do like them big.
All right, so this is the game that's going to break my heart because I know both of you guys are going to go with UConn, and Arkansas is the team I've been riding. I love them. I love their coach. Took his shirt off. He was going nuts. Is this the letdown game that Arkansas is going to run into? UConn's played great basketball the first two games. I didn't watch their first game. I watched their second game. They look great down the stretch versus St. Mary's.
I don't think it's a letdown game. I wouldn't say that. I don't think Arkansas comes out and plays terrible or anything. I just think UConn's good defensively, and you said it earlier. UConn has very good interior defense with their bigs, and Arkansas struggles to shoot the ball.
Agreed.
They drive the ball. I think they're playing right into the strength of UConn. I think if Arkansas comes out and has a game where out of nowhere they shoot well, I think they can easily upset UConn. Arkansas doesn't impress me defensively either. And I think that again, I think UConn's bigs are gonna kind of have their way inside, and UConn has a couple guys that can shoot. I think UConn wins. I think it's a good game though. I think it's a competitive game. I don't by any means think Arkansas is going to come out and and fall flat on their face.
I will tell you this. Arkansas has two players that are projected to be in the top 15 draft picks, and they had a total of 4 points last round. Anthony Black had a terrible game. And if you want to talk about a terrible game, Nick Smith Jr. absolutely was a ghost. They didn't even have him in the game down the stretch. He's a starter. He had 0 points. He looked terrible. I don't know what they do this week to change that, but what I will tell you is this. Those two first-round picks need to be amazing to win this basketball game versus UConn.
When we did our brackets last time, Cottrell had them going deep, and I was kind of giving them grief. And here we are. I mean, Cottrell nailed this right on the head.
Yeah, so Gene, you said you thought I was picking UConn. I'm picking Arkansas here. I had Arkansas in my bracket going to the Elite Eight, and this is the West region so far. I've been perfect, so it's going everything's going the way I thought it would. So I think Arkansas will have enough to get past UConn. I know with UConn, Sonogo is an absolute monster. I've seen UConn play a few times this year. He hasn't been as dominant as he was last game against St. Mary's all season. Like he's been a force, but that game was incredible. I think Arkansas has what it takes. Obviously, Arkansas is not a great shooting team, but the performance they put up last week with their two best players not even being a factor at all, I think that should give Arkansas all the confidence in the world. If they're not playing well and we're winning and we just beat a number 1 seed, how are we going to look when our two best players are playing well? So I got Arkansas winning this game, but I think the West here, they're going to produce the two best games of the weekend.
What's happening, Douglas? Douglas Lewis Brooks, appreciate you checking us out in the chat. How you feeling? You saying my name? I appreciate you. I will say this: if Adamo Sinago has any game like he's been having in these tournaments, it's going to be tough for Arkansas in the paint. I got to pick Arkansas. Arkansas is my team. I've been riding with them all year. I just need my first-round talents to actually participate in the basketball game this time. So I'll go Arkansas, but I don't feel good about it. Last game on the docket, we got UCLA versus Gonzaga. This is another pretty easy game to me. A rematch of a very, very good Final Four matchup that we watched just 2 years ago. This is not the same Gonzaga team. And UCLA, I believe, is better than they were 2 years ago. I like UCLA in this one. I think they'll win it by double digits. Drew Timme is not – you can't just win with Drew Timme. There's still a couple holdovers from that Gonzaga team. I get it. I think Rasir Bolton's still there. But at the end of the day, I just don't believe in just Drew Timme. And Timme is going to give you points, and he's going to keep them in the game for the most part, but it can't just be Drew Timme.
I don't disagree. I mean, I don't know if I think UCLA wins by a lot, but I think UCLA is a better team, and I'll take UCLA, balance offensively versus Gonzaga running everything through Drew Timmy. I I, I just think UCLA is the better team. They're better defensively. I think it's a really good game, though. I think it's a close game. I mean, I don't think UCLA wins by double digits. I don't see that, but I'm taking the Bruins to advance.
I also have UCLA advancing, but I was with you guys up until um talking about Gonzaga, and I agree they aren't the same as they've been the past couple years. But Gonzaga has actually shown me that they have some fight left in them still. Julian Strawther's been playing well in the
Yep.
tournament so far. Obviously, Drew Timmy's been great. And the one thing with Gonzaga is both their matchups so far, they've gotten down early, and you could tell the look on everyone's faces on the court. They haven't had one fear at all.
Yeah.
Like they
Drew
were they
Timmy.
were they
That's
were
Drew
down.
Timmy.
They were down, and there was never a look of concern for them. Like with Purdue, you could tell they tightened up. Like, hey, second half, this game's tight down the stretch. Gonzaga, there's never been a look of worry with them. With UCLA, Peter brought up the great point. UCLA is fighting the injury bug at the wrong part of the year, and they're already a team that's not that deep. I think UCLA has enough to get it done here because their best players are healthy and they're going to be playing. But I mean, if they get into foul trouble, I could see this game getting tight down the stretch.
Well, are you telling me that if Arkansas figures out a way to beat UConn, I could be looking at them in the Final Four with a little bit injured UConn team? Or a little bit injured UCLA team? Are you telling me that my $25, $1,500 lottery ticket has a chance, Cottrell? College Cottrell, I need you to come through for me. Drew's
So
been in college for 23 years. He's
the
older than me. I'm 37.
the funny part is, Gene, we had the conversation in the group,
Yep.
and I'd asked you, I was like, hey, do you still have that futures bet in? You said yes. And I was like, hey, you should definitely keep that in. Nick Smith Jr. will be back for the tournament. I love them. I feel like they're going to be seated too low, and they're going to have a chance to beat some teams. And here we are. So I absolutely think that Arkansas has a very live shot of going to the Final Four.
Drew Timmy's been in college for 8 years. Of course they're resilient. The guy should be a doctor by now. He's got a doctorate.
He should.
All right, so all I want, I don't want to go too far in this because we're going to talk about it next week again. I want you to give me, because obviously you don't have to give me your winners now. I want you to give me your Final Four out of this and then your champion. Don't go nuts. Don't go long. We're 45 minutes in already. Give me your Final Four and your champion. Cottrell.
I mean, three out of my four are still alive, so I'm going to still roll with them. UCLA, Houston, and Alabama, the three I picked, are still alive, so I'm going to roll with them. And then out of that East region, I'm going to roll with Tennessee. I said it last week. I think if Tennessee, I fully expect them to win this week, but I think Tennessee will take care of business in their next matchup and get to that Final Four. And then in the final, I still have UCLA against Bama and UCLA being my champion. I still see all that going exactly how I thought it would.
Mr. Shallcross.
Obviously, I'm sticking with Alabama in the South. East, I'm going to go back to my gut before Cottrell poisoned me. I'm going with Tennessee. Midwest, I'm sticking with Houston, who I have in the finals. And the West, I have UConn in the Final Four as well, so I'll stick with UConn. And then I have Alabama over Houston in the championship game.
Well, I have Bama in my Final Four, and I have them as my champion, so I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to move in the East, which has been the blown-up bracket, to Kansas State. I'm riding Kansas State until
Who'd you have before, Gene?
Fall off. I had Kentucky.
Okay.
It's okay. I'm blow it up. It's blown up. It's fine. I would love my gut and my heart tells me that it's going to be UConn, but my heart and my money tells me Arkansas. I'll take Arkansas in the West, and then to finish out the Midwest, I'm going to go with Texas, who I have in my Final Four also.
To clarify here, I also have Texas on my actual bracket. I got Texas instead of Houston. Just want to make that
in my actual bracket. I have Alabama in my actual bracket. I had Kentucky, and then in the West, I think I got to check it, but I definitely didn't have I definitely didn't have Arkansas. I might have had UCLA. I think I had UCLA. I think I still have 3 or 4 left, but I'll check it out afterwards. But I've lost a ton of first round matchups. Like any first round matchup you could lose, I lost it. Like any coin flip for like a team, like I had Memphis and like whatever it was, I lost. True definition of a homer. There's no way you win that bet. I'm sure your bracket got busted 2 rounds in. Hey, listen, I am a homer. I am. That's okay. But none of these teams are my teams. So, yes, I'm going to pull for my bet, Peter. I'm okay with you calling me a homer, but like I put $25 into $1,500. I got to root for that, right? I'm telling you what my head's telling me it's going to be UConn, okay? So let me just do you want to pick UConn? Will that make you feel better, Peter? I don't want to upset you. My bracket been busted, but I've won plenty of brackets before. I'm okay. I would have won the bracket if Gonzaga would have beat Baylor, but yeah, they didn't do that. But let's move on. We have a lot more to get into. Oh God, I gotta look at this. I'm on the list. Look, I'm on the list. I still have 1160.
You made the cut.
Made the cut. But Liz is friggin' dominating 440 points. But man, I say this all the time, right? 440 points, and she's dominating. Her national champion is still alive, which is great. But the max points is what I look at. Because there's sometimes somebody will have 440 points, but they don't have anything left. They have no Final Four team. She has more max points than I do, so obviously she did a better job than I did. Uncle Shally's leading the show and leading the max points.
No,
that's huge.
Tired of always winning's at 15-10. He's leading the max
I didn't even realize that. Who's tired of always winning?
That's Brandon.
Probably Brandon, because
God, Brandon. If Brandon wins another friggin' thing, I'm done. Just send him his $50 back. But I'm tired of always winning. That's why that makes sense. Brandon's got 1,510 points possible. That's amazing.
We'll know this weekend though, because he has different picks than me. So one of us after this weekend is going to be screwed because I have 6 of my 8 elite 8 teams still in. So and I think he's very similar to that, but we have different picks.
I get it.
So if and then he has the same national champion. So after this weekend, one of us will not be able to catch the other one.
Got to give College Cottrell his credit. 1,470 potential points is really good. I must have a finals team missing. There's no way. I might have had Arizona. I don't think 1160 potential means that I'm missing something big. I can't have 3 out of my 4 Final Four teams left. So I have to relook at my bracket. I did it on a boat, so I apologize, but I don't remember what I picked. Looking at this right now.
Yeah, man, I have 6 of 8 elite 8, and I still have 3 or 4 Final Four.
Why am I saying I'll look at it right now? I got it right here. ESPN. I got it right here. Tournament challenge. My team stinks. All right, here we go. I had my Final Four was Kansas in the Final Four. That's what I had. Kansas, Texas, Kentucky, and Bama, and my finals was Alabama over Kansas. So I lost there.
Kansas is the big one for you then.
Yep, correct. And then my elite 8 is Alabama, Baylor, they're gone. Purdue, they're gone. Kentucky, they're gone. Houston, Texas, UCLA, and Kansas. So
I got 5 out of my 8 left. So
I got 4
for the elite 8. Bama, Houston, Texas, Arkansas, UCLA.
Look at these dudes. What's up, Josh? How you feeling, brother? Typo got him really well. We got to move on. We got UFC with a UFC pay-per-view to happen. Listen, there's times on this show where I'm not humble. There's some times on this show where my humility is not there. Tonight is one of those nights where I need to just point something out. We're an argument in 6 months ago about Kamaru Usman being one of the greatest fighters of all time. 2 fights later versus Leon Rocky Edwards, and Kamaru Usman is no longer a conversation. I'm just calling it like I see it. Kamaru Usman was overrated like I said he was. And yes, it is the beginning and end of Kamaru Usman. Nothing against the guy. He doesn't belong in the same breath as Khabib Nurmagomedov. Not even the same breath. If you say Khabib Nurmagomedov and Kamaru Usman, you just must mean they both fight in the UFC. Because the argument is finished. Stop it. Cottrell, would you like to apologize on air?
Absolutely not.
I should like apology. Maybe
Absolutely.
you could bring me like
absolutely not.
No?
Absolutely not. Because if we're putting everything into context, I didn't have Kamaru on my Mount Rushmore or anything like that, but I said he was approaching the conversation with another title defense. To say he's overrated, I don't know about that one either. I mean, I get it. He's lost his last 2 fights. One, he was completely dominating. This last one, he lost it. I mean, that's what happens though. If you fight long enough, you're gonna lose. That's just typically what happens.
That is a bunch of baloney.
It's not. I mean, you see it with pretty much everybody. You defend your belt. If Kamaru would have defended his belt 3 times and then took his ball and went home, he would have been undefeated as well at this point in his career.
He lost early in his career?
In the UFC, he was undefeated. Okay. That's what I'm saying. If he would have had 3 title defenses in the UFC, then left, he would have been undefeated in the UFC, and we're having a different discussion anyway. But I mean, got to give Leon all his credit. Leon, obviously, it's tough. We were talking about it last week on the show. I think it's tough fighting on your home soil. I think there's a lot of pressure that gets put on you in that situation, and especially for Leon in that case. Like, I know he knocked out Kamaru, but we saw how that fight was going. It was a fight where he was losing, pretty much he won the first round, but outside of that, he had been dominated the next 3.5. So I thought Leon would have a lot of pressure on him in London, but he took that pressure and he ran with it.
He cheated.
He cheated.
What
do you mean?
Leon? Leon Edwards cheated in the first fight, and he cheated in this fight. I'm not listening. It sounds. Well,
he did, but
he grabbed the cage 7 times in 2 fights.
Leon legit could have lost. He could have lost 2 or 3 points Saturday.
I can't take away from him.
He grabbed the cage with his hand 7 times in 2 fights versus a predominant wrestler.
I can't take away the actions of him winning. See, this is what I hate, Gene. You talk about all this with Kamaru and then say he lost to a cheater. Like, I mean, make up your mind here. What side do you want to be on?
He's being objectionable. That's being a good journalist.
Thank you. Thank you, Shally. See, Bill gets me, right? Bill gets me.
Bill, that was sarcasm. Don't listen to Bill.
But the point is, I don't think I never said Kamaru Usman was a bad fighter. I just thought it was absurd that we were talking about him and Khabib Nurmagomedov in the same conversation. That was my whole argument.
I just think it's absurd. We're talking about a guy with 3 title defenses as one of the greatest of all time.
He's 30-0. Leon Edwards.
3 title defenses.
No, we can't do this again.
3 title defenses. If I fight your 5-year-old nephew and then go fight the 12-year-old.
They ran from him for 3 years.
If you say so.
They did.
If you say so.
No one wanted to fight him.
Tony Ferguson did, and what happened? There was always some excuse. Ramadan happened and all this other stuff. So
Tony Ferguson fell out of the fights too for injury. It wasn't just
he did once, and Khabib dropped twice. He did. That did happen.
But we kind of all know if Khabib fought Tony.
It's easy to say that now.
Can you tell me
hypotheticals
when Khabib was in trouble in 30 fights?
Dustin Poirier had him in trouble. I mean, we this is regurgitated.
25 seconds, maybe.
This is just regurgitated.
This is the 4th time we've had this argument on this show.
Because I'm right, and it's been proven. He said
In what sport do you defend your belt? In boxing, does anybody with 3 title defenses, are they anywhere close to a Mount Rushmore? In UFC, anybody else outside of Khabib, 30-0, it's nice to throw out that 0 moniker, but we're talking about 3 title defenses.
Trell told me on this show just 6 months ago that if Kamaru Usman fell off, he would admit I was right about Khabib being better than him.
I didn't
Now,
say that.
You
I
didn't
didn't say
you
fell off.
you admit him being on the Mount Rushmore, but you admit
Correct.
that Khabib was better than him.
And I said Khabib is better.
Okay, that's
we've
it.
had this
That's it.
conversation.
We don't need to
already.
go any further.
We've had the conversation.
Just apologize.
The part I remember, Cottrell said if he had 2 more title defenses,
Then we're talking about he's
legit
approaching Mount Rushmore territory. That's exactly what I said.
That's the part I remember. Because again, I literally just sit here and quiet and listen to you two yell.
But we've gotten an argument. I've said this before though. Kamaru Usman is a good fighter. He's not a great fighter, and people are talking about him being the best 170 ever. When GSP owned that division forever, when Matt Hughes is probably a better 170 than he was. Like if we're being honest with ourselves,
he is now.
Okay, so. What did we think of the card? It was a terrible card. Can we all be honest about that?
Yeah, I mean,
best fight was the co-main,
right?
And it was only 3 rounds, so
bad card, right?
Yeah.
And normally, what happens when they have the 5 o'clock overseas card? When was the last time they had a 5 o'clock overseas card and it was great?
Mm-hmm. The Suragan and Tuivasa card was in Paris. It wasn't 5 o'clock. I think it was like a 3 o'clock. That card was actually decent.
That works. I gotta get. I don't think Gaethje won the fight. If I'm being real with you.
Oh,
I watched it twice. I think. First of all, I was rooting for Gaethje. I wanted Gaethje to win. I like Gaethje more. I picked Gaethje. He was the underdog. I don't think
he won 30-27 like one of the judges had said.
29-28, 29-28.
29-28, I think is right.
I think I for sure gave Gaethje the second round, and I thought the third round was a toss-up, but Gaethje was more active, and it's funny that he went for the takedown at the end because it's like, hey, if you need anything to swing this round, I got this takedown here. Just throw that on top of my stats. So
it's you look at the way they've been scoring fights the last couple months with takedowns and what it's. I don't disagree. I don't disagree, but again, I mean, you look at it from his point of view, the way they're being scored and how it's swinging rounds crazy in one guy's way or the other. I don't blame him. I think it's funny, Gaethje. It's funny that if you just looked at them after the fight, you were like, oh, like Gaethje destroyed this guy, and that's really not. It's not what really happened. Like one of the guys looked like I hit by a car, and Gaethje almost looked like he didn't get in a fight.
Looked like he just got done with like sparring session.
Yeah, but it was a close fight.
Joseph Jeffers, I'll bring up John Jones on the show. He hits women.
Oh, well,
I'm being sarcastic. I just don't like
it. Yes, he would.
My question that I want to ask, because there's really not much to get into with this card. We just talk about Leon Edwards beating Kamaru Usman again, and now Leon Edwards will be able to defend his title. What I found really interesting, I understand. No, I don't. I can't understand. Leon Edwards seems to be really ducking Colby Covington. He has been openly and actively talking about he doesn't deserve it. He should be on Dana's shit list for turning down fights, this, and that. Leon Edwards seems to be trying to get out of fighting Colby Covington. I don't think that's a good fight for Leon.
No,
it's not.
And that's why he doesn't want to fight. It's a horrible matchup for Leon.
What do you think the next fight for Leon Edwards is Colby Covington? I mean, Dana's basically all but said that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it should be, to be quite honest. I mean, I don't know where else you go.
The one thing that kind of makes it weird in this situation is Colby's last 3 fights have been Kamaru, Jorge, and Tyron Woodley. And I get it. He had a close fight against Kamaru. He lost it. He obviously dominated Jorge. And then, of course, dominated Tyron Woodley as well. I think it really depends on next month and how that card goes. I think if we see Jorge with a crazy impressive knockout, that might jump him to the top of the list. If we see Gilbert Burns with a crazy knockout or submission early, I think that he would have a stake to the claim.
I don't think either one of them do. I think the only thing that's holding them hostage is the fact that Leon Edwards has went on this public tour saying he's not going to fight Colby Covington. He's not going to get the first title shot. He also said Dana White privilege is real with Colby Covington, I think, which I completely disagree with. Look, at the end of the day, I think that Leon Edwards is saying anything he can say to not get in a ring with Cole. And I hate Colby.
I mean, I don't disagree. I don't disagree
I don't
with
like Colby
you.
either.
Like,
I think
Colby
Colby's
is definitely should be on Dana's shit list. Like, I do think the Dana White privilege thing is real, but I don't think that's why Kobe's getting this shot here. I just think if I'm Dana, though, I would also look at it like, okay, say Kobe fights Leon. I shouldn't say we all think, but we think that'd be a bad fight for Leon. So let's just say for argument's sake, Kobe wins that fight. You're kind of back in the same boat that you were in before, because Kamaru would still be in the championship picture. And I'm sure you don't want to see Kamaru and Kobe for a fourth time.
Want to be a
third time.
But both, I don't have no problem with that.
But I mean, Kamaru's already won 2 matches. Like, we don't typically see that kind of matchup a third time.
2 very close fights.
He has for sure.
Before Leon Edwards, Kobe's the only one that really gave him a fight.
Correct.
I mean,
Leon didn't give him a fight. Leon just knocked him out in the 5th round after being down 4-0.
Yeah, exactly. He was getting shut out. Like that. We've mentioned it numerous times. That wasn't a fight. That was demolition. He pulled the leg kick from fucking God out and hit him with it.
And it's funny how when you see a fighter get knocked out like that, how much different their game plan looks. Kamaru looked different. Leon looked more confident, and Kamaru looked like he was hesitant about that leg kick. He looked like he was looking for it. When I watched Zhang Wei Li fight Rose Namajunas the second time, I'm like, man, she just caught her. Zhang's a way better fighter. She's gonna beat her. She's the better fighter, right? But then when I watched him fight, I'm like, the whole fight, Zhang Wei Li was like, I gotta make sure I don't get kicked in the head again.
Yep.
And like, it was more of a thought process of don't get kicked in the head than win the fight.
And I mean, I don't know. I don't even care if Jorge wins the fight. I mean, the dude's lost 3 fights in a row. Colby being one of the guys that Colby beat him most recently. There's no world that you could put Jorge ahead of Colby in those standings. Gilbert Burns, I guess you could argue if you want Gilbert and Colby maybe to fight to get that opportunity.
Leon would love Gilbert Burns.
I agree, but
stylistically, it's perfect.
My point is, I would at least listen to that. There's no scenario where Jorge Masvidal gets a title shot. Zero.
I agree with you. I'm just saying, I think Jorge obviously is a fan favorite. He brings in money. If he knocks out Gilbert Burns and Leon, this is the fight that Leon's been clamoring for. Leon already came out and said, like, if Jorge wins his next matchup, like, I want Jorge next. So I'm saying, like,
of course he does.
No.
Yeah,
of course. Like, I agree. I'm with you guys.
From he bided his time to get his title shot, which I agree he should have done, because Dana wanted him to fight an extra fight, which was a dangerous fight. And I was like, if you wait this long to get back in the cage on him, you shouldn't take another fight. I agree with that. But now that he's become a champion, now all of a sudden he wants to be the guy that wants to start ducking people. Like, he's going back to the opposite of what he was. Yeah. He's going to get Colby. Dana wants it to be Colby. It should be Colby. Colby's the next guy on that list. If you want to be a fighting champ, you want to be an all-time great, you're going to have to fight Colby at some point anyway. So go fight him. And if you lose, lose.
I agree 1,010%. I'm just saying, from just the outside perspective and just business in general, Leon wants the Jorge fight. Jorge is a fan favorite.
You have
and
one
if Jorge knocks out Gilbert Burns, that's going to be the thing that's most fresh in everybody's mind. And I'm just saying the conversation would be had at that point.
You have one argument, Cottrell. If it's not Colby, then who? It's not Gilbert. It's not Jorge. It's Bilal Muhammad. That's the only guy that you could, like, justifiably and Bilal Muhammad is taking full advantage of this. He's been on Twitter calling Colby a punk and this and that, and saying he'd drag him, and he's trying to get in that spot. And Leon will sign up to fight Bilal. Leon doesn't want to fight Colby. And Leon's I'm telling you, the styles just don't work.
He's already started a fight with Bilal.
Yeah, well, of course he has.
No, I'm saying like that. I'm saying the fight already happened. The fight already happened.
And again,
it didn't finish because Leon poked him in the eye.
Yeah. Gilbert or Leon is not going to want to listen to Colby for 3 months of a lead up to that fight.
Correct.
The trash talk and all that
September, October, Joseph.
Yeah. Yep. And
I think it'll be the September card, the one right after Labor Day.
Yep. Leon is not going to want to deal with that press and not going to want to deal with the back and forth. It's everything about Colby is not good for Leon. I mean, I get it. If you're the champ, you make more money if you get defenses and every other thing. So, I
Yeah.
mean, from that point of view, I get it. But at some
That's
point,
why
man,
he wants. That's why he wants Jorge.
yeah. I
Yep.
mean, if you get called
Pay-per-view.
out though by the number one contender, and you already, again, Dana, I think already knew going in that's what he was getting. You better start preparing to fight, dude. It's who you're going to get. That's what Dana wants. I think I think it's going to be fun. The build-up's going to be fun. You know what Colby's going to do. You know what cards Colby's going to play. And I don't think Leon wants any part of any of it. And again, I don't like Colby. I think Colby's a good fighter. I don't like the shtick, and I don't like all the other crap. But I think Colby is deserving of the fight.
Joe Rogan recently called Colby Covington out. And he was trying to be like nice about it. He was just like, I don't know if he wants this out there, but that's a whole shtick. He's like the nicest guy ever. And that's a whole WWE skit, which everyone knows it is. Like, I think that he plays a heel really well.
Well, I think at the beginning, I think a lot of people really had disdain for him. And then those stories kept coming out. They were like, listen, they were like, you talk to Colby Covington like off camera, like he's like the soft-spoken, like nicest guy in the world. And as soon as you put a camera in front of him and turn it on, he's this WWE guy. He loves Donald Trump. He's this, and that. And everybody that knows says the same thing. They're like, he's not that guy. Like, away from everything, he's not that guy.
Well, I mean, when they came out, like when he fought Jorge Masvidal, it basically just came out and said, like, you know, I had to be like this because I was going to get cut from the UFC. So
he was.
I kind of, in a way, I kind of respect it.
Did you guys see the odds for the next big card? We'll talk about it, obviously. Don't look. I don't want you to look. I want you to try to guess. I'm going to give you 2 fights, and then we're going to move on from UFC. Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. What do you think the odds are for that fight?
Pereira's probably minus 165 is my guess.
Okay. I'll say minus. I'll go a little higher. I'll say minus 225.
Izzy is minus 155.
I get it.
It's 100-point swing than what you said.
No, I know why it is that way, but I mean, I don't agree.
Gilbert Burns versus Jorge Masvidal.
I mean, Gilbert Burns should be favored, but he's probably not.
Gilbert minus 310.
It's like Gilbert minus 145.
Gilbert minus 470.
I mean, it's about,
I figured it was. If you watch the sport, I mean, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Gilbert's
that fight should go. You know how that fight should go.
Correct.
It's a hell of a spread.
I mean, honestly, at that point, I'm sure, because obviously you're getting Jorge at plus money anyway. If you, I mean, I'd say you're
100% throwing $50 on
sprinkle on a Jorge knockout.
Absolutely, yeah.
He's not gonna win by decision.
Yeah, that's the only way he wins the fight. But again, I mean, he lands one of those.
And Gilbert Burns is harder to knock out than a Mack truck.
Oh, he's got the he's got the
Hamzat, so
yeah.
Dude, Hamzat hit him with everything in the kitchen sink in that first round, and Gilbert Burns was there. I couldn't believe it. Hamzat
that's the other one
him.
That's interesting right now.
He's fighting
the limbo where Hamzat is at.
He's fighting 180.
I mean, I don't see him ever getting back down to 170, but
he's just not going to be able to stay there. He's just not. It's just, we've talked about it before, man. And like all the big guys like have talked about it. Like every cut gets harder and harder. Like it's not realistic for him to fight that weight class the rest of his life. It's just not.
Agreed.
Although recently he said he broke down and how easy of a fight it would be for him to destroy Colby Chaos Covington. Hamzat Chimaev explains why little boy Colby Covington is an easy fight for him. And I agree with him. I think he's just bigger, stronger, and Colby's going to want to do exactly what Hamzat does. I think that Hamzat's the better wrestler, and I think Hamzat will absolutely destroy him at his own game because he's bigger. But the problem is this, Bill, you said it right. And I got to compliment you. I don't think he gets down to 170. And Colby will do this, right? If Hamzat is 171,
yep,
I'm not fighting him.
Nope.
I'm not fighting him.
I wouldn't either.
If I don't be a little bit more than that if it's a non-title fight. But yes, you're right.
I'm sorry, he didn't make the weight, and he would call him out.
Nate Diaz did it, and I 100% agree. You get a pound for you get a leniency pound.
Well, then it'll be 172. My point being is, if he's 1 pound above the leniency pound, Colby would be like, I'm not fighting him. Sorry.
Which is the right thing to do.
I get it. Eddie Alvarez
Nate.
was very critical of people. By the way, Eddie Alvarez got a fight coming up soon, which is actually pretty fun. I can't believe he's still fighting, but he's got a fight coming up soon.
Can somebody let him stop fighting, please?
Bro, he's got to take care of his family. I don't know what to tell you, man.
I know.
If
If he keeps
fighting, he won't be taking care of them for much longer.
Oh my God. He's got a fight coming up, I think, early April.
Against who?
Let me tell you right now. I heard about it and I read about it.
Hopefully it's Cottrell.
Chad Mendez. Fighting Chad Mendez.
They're fighting. They're bare knuckle. Is that what they're doing?
Bare knuckle.
Yeah.
Oh,
which
so the dude,
terrible for Chad.
Even crazy head trauma is going to go fight bare knuckle now.
Correct.
Chad Mendez is like fighting a guy with pillows for hands. He's a full wrestler.
Just tape on, man. Anything can happen, dude.
My point being is I don't think Chad Mendez could knock you out, let alone Eddie Alvarez.
Eddie Alvarez.
You've watched Chad fight before, right? He's a full-blown wrestler. And Eddie was a state champion wrestler. I think that's a good fight for him, if I'm being honest with you. If you're gonna go make $1 million,
is he making
$1
million?
They are bare knuckle pays out decently well, yeah.
Chad's awkward though, man. We've seen him fight other guys before, man. His footwork and the way he does stuff, he's just weird. He messes people up.
I want to see something real quick, just for fun, and then we'll move on. I want to see the last time Chad Mendez knocked somebody out. He's 18-5. Let me see.
I don't think you're gonna knock out. You might get.
He knocked out Miles Jury. Miles Jury was a joke. He was a 7-0 joke, but he knocked out Miles Jury. Lost to Frankie. Lost to Connor. Lost to Volkanovski, obviously. And he knocked out Ricardo Lamas. And Clay. Well, the ghost of Clay Guida.
The ghost of Clay Guida. My God.
Clay Guida used to be a monster, bro.
Yes, he did.
The ghost of Clay Guida is not the same person.
Clay Guida is low-key still fighting.
I know.
He is. But the era of prime Clay, Frankie Edgar, BJ Penn, that 155 class was that way.
I've never seen
Vincent Henderson.
I've never seen a beating.
Vincent Henderson's another good one.
But Bill, I've never seen a beating worse than what Frankie Edgar took in the first round versus Clay Guida. It was probably a 10-6 round.
Yeah, it's bad.
I've never seen anything like it. I thought that fight should have been stopped 3 times in the first round, and Frankie came back and won the friggin' fight. That has to be the best comeback in the history of the sport.
That and I'm pretty sure his next fight after that was when he upset BJ. I'm pretty sure.
It was absurd.
Frankie Edgar went on a run, man.
Yeah, he did. Give him credit. All right, we got some shortstops to get into, boys. Baseball is prevalent, man. And if there's anything that will get you into baseball, I'm telling you right now, man, if you didn't watch that World Baseball Classic, you were missing, and we're going to talk about the World Baseball Classic next, but you were missing a hell of a performance. See, I look at these lists right here. I look at these lists, and I thought I was going to be the crazy one, having Jeremy Pena 7, Charles 6. I wanted to put him higher. Adrian 100% talked me out of it. He's like, you can't do it yet. Just can't.
Yeah. So I have him where I have him.
I get it. But Jeremy Pena, all right, so like, Bill, you're a sabermetrics guy. You're a numbers guy. Do you know he was the best defensive first baseman, not just last year, like statistically per game in the last 8 years? He had minus 16 runs saved. Like, he had 16 runs saved.
Yeah, plus 16.
Yeah, that's what I meant. But I meant like he saved 16 runs and he didn't play the whole season. I mean, guy's an absolute creature. We'll start with Cottrell. We'll do our wraparound like we always do. I have an honorable mention I need to talk about.
Shally does as well.
Okay.
Is it the same guy?
No, well, maybe. Is it?
No, I don't believe so. No, it's not.
Mine's on Cottrell's list.
Okay, then no, it's not.
So my number 10 is O'Neal Cruz. Obviously, last year was rookie year. Dude, if you see him on the field, he looks like he's out of place. I mean, he's an absolute freak out there. And half a season, the numbers that he put up, incredible. Only played just under 80 games, 17 home runs. I think with the full season, the sky's going to be the limit for him. I mean, he's going to be the bright spot for that Pirates team. Obviously, Pirates are going to be terrible yet again, just because, I mean, that's just what they are. But I think he's going to have a special year, and it's going to really be swept under the rug because he's in Pittsburgh. But I see him, 30-plus home runs this upcoming year, 100-plus RBIs. So I got O'Neal Cruz coming in at my number 10.
Yeah, Charlie.
O'Neal Cruz is just off my list, and I'm going to say this about O'Neal Cruz. Physical gifts. I don't know if there's a better athlete on anybody's list. He has an absolute bazooka for an arm. He needs to work on some things. I think I don't have him on my list this year. I will say this: he's talented enough that if he tightens some things up, gets a little bit more fundamental in the field, actually fielding the ball, not throwing it. Throwing it is not an issue for him. And he cuts way down on the strikeouts and sharpens his approach to the plate a little bit. He's a guy that next year could easily be 4 or 5 on anybody's list. He will make that type of jump.
Well, that was my honorable mention. Thanks, Bill.
My fault. My honorable mention is Tommy Edman for St. Louis. I'm curious to see how he's going. I didn't put him on my list. It's going to be his first year at shortstop. He was one of the best defensive second basemen last year. They're going to move him to shortstop this year. Hits for plus average. He's got decent power for a little guy. And I'm curious to see how he's going to play shortstop. But I think he's very good. I think he'll be successful there. He has a lot of range, has the arm to play short. He's one of the few guys that has the arm to switch from second to short. So I'm intrigued, and I think he's just a good little ball player. He kind of reminds me almost of like a little Chase Utley minus. He doesn't have Chase's power, but he reminds me of that type of player, and I love that type of player. So he's my honorable mention.
I like it.
Tim Anderson's number 10, a guy that all three of us have that, we've talked numerous times about how we love him, and we always find a place for him on his list. 2020, guy was hitting 353 before he got hurt last year. He was leading the AL in hitting once again. Dude is a rock star. He's one of the clubhouse leaders of Chicago. I wish he would get the hell out of Chicago because I think they're a year or two away from really blowing it up for lack of a better terms, except for 1 or 2 players like Dylan Cease. And I think they're going to rebuild. I hope he gets traded to a contender. I love watching him play. He plays with attitude, but he's a great teammate. Tim Henderson is one of the last, I don't want to say pure hitters, but he goes up to the plate and all he worries about is getting on base and getting a hit. He doesn't necessarily swing for a home run or try to hit a double. The guy just tries to get a hit, and I love that about him. So Tim Anderson's my number 10, and he's underrated defensively.
My honorable mention was O'Neal Cruz. I think he'll be in a top 5 next year, quite possibly. The guy is super gifted. He's going to get lost in the sauce in Pittsburgh, but that's actually a gift for him because he can really develop his game and become a better overall player playing in a market that does not give a shit about baseball at all. But he is super gifted, and I think I'll have him. I think he'll be in my top 5 next year. The only thing that holds him off my list this year is like they might shut him down with 30 games to play because they're 40 games out and they want to preserve him. I don't know. You never know with Pittsburgh. They're ridiculous. My number 10 is Tim Anderson. Tim Anderson is, let me just be clear when I say this. I had to find a place on my list, right? There's a lot of guys I could have put here, Tommy Edman, but watching Tim Anderson just move to second base in the World Baseball Classic, like no problem. Whatever you need. Great teammate, good hitter, underrated defensive player. Tim Anderson's just a guy's guy. He's a guy you always want in your lineup. He's a guy you always want on your team. Give me Tim Anderson, number 10. Number 9 is absolutely disrespectful, but I'll explain it. Dansby Swanson is not the 9th best shortstop in baseball. The problem is he plays for the Chicago Cubs, and the Chicago Cubs absolutely stink. And you watch what happened last year with all the Chicago Cubs that absolutely fell off these lists because the team needs to be obliterated and rebuilt completely. Dansby Swanson was a great sign for the Chicago Cubs to build around. I just think his production in that lineup offensively will be much lower because he's not batting in that Atlanta Braves lineup this year, but he's definitely not the 9th best shortstop in baseball. But I want to explain it. I'll apologize to the Dansby Swanson fan club. I also would like to hear Tom Flynn explain why it was disrespectful to have Pena at 9, 7, and 6. Would you not have him on the list, or would you have him higher?
I'm gonna address it right now, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because I don't know how much Tom watches baseball, but I'm gonna tell you this. Before October last year, 90% of the people that are talking about Jeremy Pena right now had no idea who he was. He won an incredible run, won ALCS MVP, and won the World Series MVP.
Yep.
Heading into the playoffs, he was barely hitting 250.
Yep.
He's an absolute stud defensively. He was hitting second last year and got a lot of good pitches because Altuve was hitting in front of him. He's going to start the year for the first 6 to 8 weeks with Altuve not there. He has a lot of work to do offensively. And any honest scouting report of him will tell you that. Listen, they got rid of Carlos Correa because they believe that much in the kid. And you watch him play defense, you can't blame Houston at all. He's another one like O'Neal Cruz. The sky is the absolute limit for him. He's young. He could easily be top 2, 3, 4 next year. He's got a lot of work to do at the plate, and everybody knows who he is now this year. Second year is always the most important in terms of development for players. Everybody has video on him now. Everybody has a book on him. All the pitchers have seen him. All the pitchers have a book on him now. He has to make adjustments now this year. The greats do. The goods kind of do, and other guys that fade into oblivion don't. So, again, he had a great run in the playoffs. I love watching the kid play. I think he has the ability to be higher. He's got to earn it. Just because he had a good 10-game run in the playoffs doesn't put you at the top of the list. In the ranks of guys up here that are all 100 RBI guys. He's not that yet. So until he is, that's why he is where he is on a lot of our lists.
But it is a projection list. So
correct.
I get it. So your number 9, Kittrell.
My number 9 is Tim Anderson. You guys have mentioned a lot about him already. One of my favorite players in MLB. I say it every year we have these lists. I love everything that Tim Anderson brings to the game. Obviously, his for average, just great all around player. I think this year Chicago will be better though. Gene, I know you said Chicago doesn't care. Like this is a market that they don't care about baseball. I think Chicago will be a lot.
I said,
you're talking about Pittsburgh. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Is a great market for baseball. It's one of the greatest markets ever for baseball.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think the White Sox. I think the White Sox will be a lot better this upcoming season. My number 8, it actually pained me to put him this low. Bo Bichette, another guy who I love watching. That Toronto team in general is a team who I'm always going to root for. Last year I had them winning the World Series, so I love Bo Bichette. I just think the guys that I have ahead of him are going to have better years. Like I think Bo can 100% be a 290, 300 hitter and still end up being the 8th best shortstop this year.
Number 8, I have Wander Franco. I went back and forth with what to do with him and Pena.
Yeah.
Wander Franco is the guy that, we've been heard. He was the number 1 prospect in baseball 2 years ago, plays for Tampa Bay. He's been up. He just can't stay healthy. He was off to a really good start 2 years ago, got hurt. Last year, he got hurt at the beginning of the year, came back, started to get hot again, and then got hurt again. So he's got to stay healthy. If you look at his physical tools, the kid can do everything. Hits for power, hits for average. He is a 5-tool player. I need to see him play 150 games and see what we really have. But for production and potential alone, he moves up a little higher on this list. So I have him at number 8.
I completely agree with you. Everything that you just said. It's odd that we completely agree on things, but this list sounds like we agree on a lot. Wander Franco, it's falling in love with potential. That's what it is, right? I need him to show me this for a full season. Wander Franco could be number 2 on this list if he lived up to the potential that people see in him. Wander Franco is a stud. Problem is, he's played 153 games total in 2 seasons.
Yep.
That's an issue. The guy's got all the talent in the world, though. My number 7 is Jeremy Pena. Not only was he one of the most clutch performers in the playoffs, and he constantly got on, and he batted 2 in that lineup for the world champion Houston Astros. He was a wizard at shortstop. You don't see people come up and have 16 defensive runs saved not even playing a full season. The guy was out of this world. I fell in love with his potential last year. I think he's a really good kid. I love the and if it wasn't against the Phillies, I was rooting for it against the Yankees. Every time he gets a hit or he gets a double, he does the heart logo right on his chest, and I love that. I just really love the kid. I think he's going to have a wonderful career in Major League Baseball. But Shalley's right. It's one of those things that I love that Shalley has this prove it theory. Like, you got to show me you can do it for more than a season. I get it. I just love this kid. I really do. I'm really high on him, and I can't not be that high on him.
So number 7, I have Corey Seager. Gene just talked about, watching Pena play defense, and I did previously as well, and how he's a wizard. If there's somebody who's the opposite of that, it would be Corey Seager.
Oh, that's not accurate.
Oh, but it is.
There's somebody on this list that's the worst defender by far. It's not close, and you have him higher.
Corey Seager, for all qualifying shortstops last year, was third to last pretty much every metric. And
there's someone that's 10 runs worse than every single person on this list, and he's on your list, and he's higher.
Corey Seager was minus 16 last year.
It was minus 6. That's inaccurate. I have the stats right in front of me.
So do I. Go to Odyssey.com, go to top 10 shortstops. He was minus 16 last year. Anyway, that being said, the only reason I have him at number 7, because offensively, he's a top 2 or 3 shortstop in the league. Number 7, I have Corey Seager, Texas. I think he'll put up good numbers again this year with, hitting in that new ballpark with that Texas Rangers lineup. I think they're going to score a lot this year. I said it a couple shows ago. I think Texas is a sleeper team this year. With them getting DeGrom and a couple other pieces, I think they're going to compete. I think they'll be right there with Seattle and Houston. Corey Seager, was a great Dodger, put up numbers in a great lineup. He's the anchor of the Rangers lineup. Shortstop's the most important. It's the most, other than catcher, it's the most important defensive position on the field. He doesn't suck, don't get me wrong, but out of my list, he's the worst defensive shortstop.
It's completely inaccurate.
That's why I'm number 7, and he's not higher. I don't dislike Corey Seager. You should have to play better defense to be higher up on my list.
I just posted the link to the defensive run saved stat. He was minus 4 last year in defensive run saved. He was definitely third to last, which is accurate, but you can click on that link and see the whole list. It ranks the top 22 qualifying shortstops, and there's one shortstop that's on your list that is by far the worst defender, and he's on my list too. He's higher too, but it's Corey Seager's minus 4. He's not a good defender. He's not a plus defender, but there's somebody that's way worse, and you can click it and go through it and check it out yourself.
I'll post mine too.
So my number 7, I got Dansby Swanson. We're talking about players who aren't great at defense. Well, Dansby Swanson was quite literally the best at his position last year. He won a Gold Glove. I understand he's going to Chicago, but I think numbers wise, he will be fine. And I mean, they'll definitely take a hit. Like, maybe he won't have as many RBIs this upcoming season, but I think what he'll bring to the plate, he's still going to be, 25 or more home runs this year, and he's still going to give you, great defense on the other side. So I would have him still, top 10, and that's why he lands at number 7 for me. Jeremy Pena is a guy who I have at 6. I have him the highest out of all 3 of you guys. I agree. You do have to prove it a little bit more, but I think that playoff run was the start of him just becoming a star. When you can do that, when all the bright lights are on you, quite literally everybody in America is watching you play and you perform at that level, I think you're ready to take that next step. And so I think we will see that from him next year. You talked about him. You talk about him and what he does defensively. Another guy, Gold Glove last year. I think you're going to see better numbers from him this upcoming year. You say that there'll be like film out on him and people get to see him and he'll have to, face those adjustments. I think the opposite can be true as well. Now he knows what the big leagues actually feels like. He has a feel for the game speed, things like that. And he knows what it's like to perform at the highest level because, he did it in the playoffs. So I think Jeremy Payne is going to be poised for a breakout regular season. And we're going to be talking about him as one of the best in the game, for the next few years to come.
Number 6 for me, I have Dansby Swanson. Both you guys have already talked about him. He was kind of the shortstop that kind of got lost in the shuffle last year, free agency wise. There was the whole Carlos Correa, I want to say disaster, but he went back and forth and with failing physicals in New York, went back to Minnesota and so forth and so on. Dansby was kind of the guy that just, under the radar kind of signed his deal with Chicago and agreed to be, part of the rebuild there. I'm curious to see what his offensive numbers do. Defensively, Cottrell just mentioned it. The dude's a stud. Was 2022 Gold Glove winner. Kid's been great defensively since he came out of Vanderbilt as the #1 pick. I'm not mad that he's not in our division anymore. I got tired of seeing him. Last 2 years, he really turned the corner offensively. His average went up both years. His power numbers went both up both years as well. This year will be a little bit different without all that protection, coming out of the Atlanta Braves lineup that he had last year. So I am curious to see how he hits this year. But I think he's a solid player. He's a solid dude. Number 6 for me. I think he has the ability to be higher. I just think offensively his numbers are going to take a little bit of a dip because he's not in that Atlanta Braves lineup anymore.
I don't know how. I felt like I was going to have Corey Seager higher than anybody on this list at 6. He had an awful year last year. He switched. I don't know why he's changing his swing. He went to hit the long ball. He had his career high in home runs with 33, and his batting average dropped 55 points year over year. I'm Corey Seager. You got to stop making me look like an asshole. -4 defensively. He's not a top 10 shortstop defensively by any means. I feel like he needs to get back to what he's doing. He had a career high in strikeouts, a career low in batting average, but because he had the long ball and 33 home runs with only 80 some RBIs is terrible. He's terrible. That means you're hitting a lot of solo home runs. That's what it means.
That's not his fault though either.
I get it. I think he has a bounce back year this year in Texas, which is why I have him 6. Number 5 is the absolute worst defensive shortstop by far in all of baseball. -16 runs given up, and it is 10 runs worse than every single other person on this list. But Bo Bichette brings something to the plate offensively. I think they end up need to move him to second base, if I'm being completely honest with you. Kid's raw. He's good. Makes a lot of mistakes defensively. I think that this will be a huge bounce back year. The pressure is off Toronto. Last year, they were everyone's Cinderella dark horse team to win the whole thing. They were mine. I was wrong. I think the pressure's off them this year. You see a lot more Bo Bichette. You see a lot more Vlad Jr., and you see a lot more really great Toronto Blue Jays baseball. Bo Bichette is a stud by any means, which is why I have him top 5. But statistically and based off what he's done, he doesn't deserve to be here. I'm projecting Bo to have a phenomenal year.
This goes in like the same kind of group. He's kind of the opposite of Dansby. Defensively, he's also Bo's complicated. That's the easiest way to put it.
Yeah.
He's a little bit like O'Neal Cruz. He has a very good arm, tries to make a lot of plays with his arm instead of moving his feet. You look at the guys that we're going to mention next above this list, especially 2 of them. Just watch how smooth and easy they make shortstop look. And that is the sign of a good shortstop. Bo Bichette still had 93 RBIs last year. That's impressive when you consider who's hitting behind him. He is an offensive threat. Gene's not wrong in that he probably projects better as a second baseman. I don't think they have anybody to play it short though. And with little Biggio splitting time between there and third, I think they just leave Bo at short because he's the only guy on the roster that can play at any kind of level. But his offensive numbers, you can't ignore them. And he puts up bigger numbers than pretty much everybody on this list. And that's the thing that's kind of, what lands him, at number 5. I do agree with Gene. If you went strictly off defense, Bo and Corey Seager are not on anybody's list, but their offensive numbers are hard to ignore. I had him at 5, kind of went back and forth where to put him, but I do agree with Gene as well. I think Toronto is better this upcoming year than they were last year. And I think his numbers go up even more. So that's why he landed smack dab in the middle of my list.
Love it.
For me, number 5 is Corey Seager. Gene, you talked about how he switched up his swing, had the lowest batting average so far yet of his career. I think this upcoming year, I think it'll be a little bit different for him. I think the Rangers are going to be, we've been talking about the Rangers since we started these baseball previews. I think the Rangers are going to be a better team this year. And I think he still can hit 30 plus home runs. And I think he can get his average back up. I do think last year he was probably trying to be the hero over there in Texas. It was his first year there. And I think he wanted to. I mean, we all had him on top 10 lists before, but I think he really wanted to go there and make a name for himself being the guy instead, as opposed to being in LA when he was one of the guys. I think Corey Seager has a bounce back year this year where you see the average come up and he still hits a ton of home runs as well for a Texas team that goes to the playoffs. My number 4 is a guy who bounced around all over during free agency this past year, Carlos Correa. Carlos Correa year in, year out is one of the top shortstops in the game. I see it being no different this year. Worries me a little bit just knowing that, like, the reasons why he was kind of getting bounced back and forth and signing deals and things like that. I feel like maybe it's a little bit more serious. I don't think it's going to be too much of an effect right now, but I don't know when that will come into play. But for now, I think Carlos Correa is still a top 5 shortstop in the league.
Can I, real quick, before you go, Bill?
Yeah.
You said a comment about Corey Seager, and I, from a guy that's played baseball his entire life, I know what Corey Seager went through last year as far as hitting the long ball with low average. There's a guy who plays in our softball league, and I don't want to put the guy out there like that. I'm not going to put his name out there. I'm not a big fan of him to begin with, but Bill played with him before, knows exactly what I'm talking about. He's a guy that if he hits a home run, it's probably the worst thing that can happen for him. Because what ends up happening is the next 10 swings, he's trying to hit a home run again, when in reality, he should be hitting line drives, singles, and doubles like he always does when he's on. Guys like Corey Seager and what they did last year, where they just swung for the fence, hit 33 home runs, like 15 more than what their average is 18 a year, and not hit for average and hit for 245 as opposed to 300, which Corey Seager's been a staple. It's tough to get them out of that mentality. When you drive a ball out of the ballpark, it feels great, man. It's awesome to trot those bases. Corey Seager's got to really take a step back mentally and turn himself back into that line drive, singles, doubles hitters that he was, and not be the 33 home run guy. I would much rather 23 home runs, a 295 batting average, and him being Corey Seager that he's been his entire career.
I mean, I'm not gonna dive down the wormhole here, but the reason that is, if you go look at all these shortstops and you look at their WARs, Corey Seager and Bo Bichette are in the same exact boat. One was 4.7, I believe the other was 4.5 or something. They were really close. They were that high, even with their defensive struggles. They were both that high because of the numbers they put up offensively that keep them above the average shortstop in the league. Sure. And that's the whole analytics driven BS and that whole mindset of what you see in baseball now. And would you be a better player if you had 8 less home runs but more RBIs that played better defense? Yeah, but there's so many shortstops that that aren't on this, that don't hit for power, that don't hit for average. You hit 30, 33 home runs and drive in 80, 85, 90 runs. Your WAR is going to be up there. It drives you up the list. It gets you awards and it gets you paid. And that's the game of baseball where we are right now.
You're absolutely right. Corey Seager's WAR was 4.5. Bo Bichette's 4.5, 7 and 8 in the league. And, I get it. I understand what you're saying. It's one of those things that, like, when I watched the kid play, I watched that kid in LA and he was going to be an elite shortstop. And now he's fighting to be on people's top 5 list.
I think a lot of that is, I think he also knew his place in LA. And I think he knew he wasn't, however you want to cut it, he wasn't, not that he wasn't the best player on the team talent-wise. He just knew, I think he knew very early on that they weren't going to re-sign him. And, he played his role there very well. And, and there's nothing wrong with that. And he went to Texas, and now they're very much more relying upon his production. Whereas, we saw that Dodgers team from 2 years ago where Corey Seager go 0 for 4 or 4 Ks and Dodgers would score 12 runs and beat somebody. He's changed, for better or worse. I side with you on that, but there's a lot of people that would disagree with it and say he's better. The version of him now is better than he was 3 years ago. Depends how you look at baseball.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. But
you're right. Your number 4?
Number 4 got Carlos Correa. You want to watch a guy that is great defensively and makes the position look easy. You can look at Carlos Correa. And again, I mentioned this earlier with Jeremy Pena. They believe so much in Jeremy Pena that, they debatably let, the best defensive shortstop at the time walk out of town. So, but Carlos Correa had a great year last year. He took a gamble on himself and signed that 1-year deal with Minnesota. Went out last year and had a very good year. Tried to cash in this year for whatever reason. Whatever's on those physicals, I don't think we'll ever really know. But whatever was on those physicals caused a whole bunch of chaos. He ended up back in Minnesota, signed a 3-year deal. He can get back out of it again after this year if he wants to, but if not, he has the security. I think he's going to make like $25-30 million a year. Very good player. Has been one of my favorite shortstops for a long time, even though he played for Houston. But very, very good. Just doesn't quite have the offense to crack in the top 3 with the 3 guys we're all about to talk about.
All right, so my number 4 is Carlos Correa, and I didn't know if I wanted to put him this high. He's incredible, but I just am super worried about whatever was on those medical reports that got him not signed to 2 different teams. Carlos Correa is a great shortstop. Could be 3 on my list. But what ends up happening is when there's a fear of the unknown, I'm fear of missing out. And I feel like I'm missing something with Carlos Correa. And to have a team like the Mets that were all bored signing him and just trying everything they could to get him to be part of the team, but not being able to get past the physical elements, I think that's an issue. That's why he's my number 4. My number 3 is Xander Bogaerts. Let me just tell you something right now. The guy is projected to lead off with Juan Soto and Manny Machado batting 2-3. If you don't think he's going to have an offensive explosion in San Diego, I don't know what you're watching. And the cool thing about Xander is you don't need to, like, the power numbers will be down because San Diego is a very pitcher-friendly park. But Xander is a very line drive hitter. Guy's an absolute stud, sprays singles and doubles all over the field. And the bigger field will actually help him because it'll give him more space. When a guy hits the ball hard and you have more space to cover, Xander Bogaerts is going to have a great year this year. He's my number 3.
So I agree. I'm going to jump on the back of what Gene said here. He's better defensively than people think he is. I agree. I think his home run numbers are going to go down a little bit. He's also going to be hitting leadoff, so I think his RBIs dip a tad. But Gene touched on one thing. He's not strictly a power hitter. This guy's a 290 to a 305 type hitter. He's a very good hitter. He has great power to the gaps. Petco is a huge park. I think you're going to see his home runs dip a tad. I also think you're going to see his doubles and his triples increase tremendously. Just like Gene said, you hit an alley in a huge park like that with a guy who can run. His OPS, I think, has a chance to be higher this year than last year, and that's with him hitting less home runs because I think he's going to hit an insane amount of doubles and triples. I remember coming from Fenway Park, where if you hit the ball 305, you're hitting off the wall in left field, and it's very hard to hit a double into that side of the field. Whereas Petco, you're going to hit into a 395 alley. You're going to run for days. I think his runs are going to be through the roof because, just like Gene said, he's going to hit in front of Juan Soto, Tatis Jr. when he comes back, and freaking Manny Machado. If that dude's on base, he's going to get driven in a lot. I have him number 3. I struggled very mightily to do what Cottrell did, and that these were the last 2 that I placed in here space wise because I think his numbers have the ability to jump. Who Cottrell's going to talk about in a second, but I left him at number 3.
My number 3 is a guy who was near and dear to my heart in Cleveland, now with the New York Mets, Francisco Lindor. I was so happy to see him have a bounce back year from his first year in New York. Just back to being the Frankie that we were used to. Obviously, great attitude of how he approaches the game. He's always smiling. You know, obviously nicknamed Mr. Smile. What he does defensively is incredible. I mean, talk about making the position look effortless. I think Frankie is one of the guys on this list that kind of embodies that. Yeah. Everything he does is just fluent. You know, he's never stressing to make a play. Everything, it just comes easy to him. Seeing him get back to normal at the plate this past year, it was very nice and refreshing. I honestly could see Frankie being higher on this list. I just think that the two that I have ahead of him are going to have incredible years. My number 2, Xander Bogaerts. Obviously, you both just mentioned it already a ton. I think him moving over to San Diego, that's a great fresh start for him. You're going over to a team who last year they arguably performed better down the stretch after the Tatis Jr. suspension. So I think you could say that him being at the top of that lineup, he's going to have a lot of numbers there. He already hits for great average. He's already a 300 plus hitter. Moving over to San Diego, he's going to always be on base. I see Xander having a phenomenal year.
So number 2, I went with Frankie. The difference between Frankie and Xander, the difference for me was I think he's going to be in year 2 of finally being comfortable in New York. I said that last year. I think he had that rough first year. I think going from Cleveland to New York is a big adjustment for anybody. And, Lindor is not a, showy, cocky like type guy. I don't think it was that. I just think it's a big adjustment living in New York versus living in Cleveland. He was comfortable last year. He looked like his old self, just like Cottrell said. Frankie Lindor is one of those guys that no matter what team he was on, even if I was rooting against them, he's a guy that I would always sign up and pay money to watch play baseball. He plays the game the right way. That is near and dear to my heart if you know anything about me and how I view baseball. He has a great nickname, Mr. Smile. He is smooth as it gets at shortstop. I think he has a great year. I know. I mean, we've talked about the Mets numerous times. That lineup is going to produce a lot of runs. He's going to be at the top of that lineup again this year. It's behind either, McNeil or Nemo, depending on who's going to hit him. I think he's ahead of him. He's going to have plenty of opportunities to drive in runs. He's going to have Alonso and all those guys behind him. I think Frankie has another bounce back year. I think there's an outside chance Frankie wins the Gold Glove this year. That's why I have him number 2.
I think Frankie Lindor already showed you. He improved his batting average 40 points year over year, had 6 more home runs. His defensive numbers are still incredible. Frankie Lindor is a stud. He's one of the best shortstops in baseball. There's no arguments there. I think that his numbers will get even better this year, being more comfortable in New York again. I have Shally said almost everything that I was going to say about Lindor. Lindor's fun to watch. He's awesome. And I think that the new rules will help him out a ton, especially with his speed. But speaking of the new rules and who they'll help out a ton, Trey Turner might win MVP. Trey Turner might win MVP. The guy is, first of all, he doesn't hit below 300. He hit 298 last year. And with the shift gone, he's never going to hit below 300 ever again. The guy's going to hit over 300. He does it every year. And now he's going to steal another 15 bags. He's hitting the ball out of the ballpark in the World Baseball Classic. He had 5 home runs and 8 at-bats, which was absurd. Trey Turner is the best shortstop in baseball. And it's like you combine some of these great players and what they do, and Trey Turner does it all well. Trey Turner's going to run the bases well. He's going to field well. I mean, although he does have a little bit too many errors, he's still an exceptional fielder. He gets to a lot more balls than you expect him to get to. He just has lapses of throwing the baseball sometimes. But Trey Turner is the best shortstop in baseball, and I have no issue having him number 1.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with anything he said. On top of everything else, I do think his mechanics, let him down a little bit. He gets a little lax throwing the baseball sometimes, rather than just, going through his motion and just, throwing the ball normally. But that being said, he is extremely quick. His fielding range metrics are towards the top of the league.  Like I said, if he has one downfall defensively, it's his I don't want to say his arm. He has a good arm. It's the way he
Wild.
yeah, he throws the ball too relaxed sometimes, so rather than just throwing it. But so last year, 100 RBIs out of the leadoff spot. Sometimes he batted 2. The dude can do everything. He's fast. Everybody is familiar with the myths or the memes or the gifs of him sliding through home plate and sliding all the way through the dirt to like the grass almost. The guy is a lightning bolt of a runner. I am so freaking happy that we have him. He's a great piece. He's going to bat leadoff for us all year. He's going to drive in a bunch of runs. He's going to score even more runs with the guys we have hitting behind him, especially once Bryce Harper gets back. I think he's the best shortstop in baseball overall as a complete package. I don't really think it's arguable coming into this year. And I'm excited to see what he does. I'm just damn happy that I have a front row ticket to watch Trey Turner play 162 times this year. So he's number 1 for me. And just like Gene, not a homerish thing. I feel ridiculously comfortable putting him there.
I mean, you guys already said pretty much everything I would want to say about Trey Turner. I think the other thing too is him coming off of, Gene, you mentioned it as well, him coming off of his performance so far through the World Baseball Classic. I think he's going to, early beginning of the season, he's going to hit the ground running. Like, he's already in a rhythm. I think you're going to see great numbers, from him to start. And obviously he's a guy that hits for average, but he's knocking home runs out, World Baseball Classic. It felt like every at bat. I know we're about to get there right now. All your Phillies players there showed out, but yeah, watching Trey is gonna be great for you guys, and honestly, might be the piece that helps you get over the hump. Obviously, you went to the World Series last year without him. You had a piece like that. I don't know how you can't say, that's a guy that could turn the tide completely to win the World Series next year.
All right, so we're going to get into the World Baseball Classic, but I have a trivia question for you guys this week. And it's a baseball one. So there are 5 players that have made the Hall of Fame that have played for the Florida/Miami Marlins. 5. I want you to name them. Now, I'll be clear when I say this, right? Their primary team is not the Miami, Florida Marlins. They had to play 1 season there. See how many you 2 guys can get, or in the chat, have fun.
They are 100% in the Hall of Fame already, or like they're
all of them are in the Hall of Fame.
I know one. One's easy.
Well, just name it. Yeah, you got 5.
Oh, I know. Ivan Rodriguez is one.
Pudge Rodriguez is one. That's correct.
Cabrera is going to be one, but he's not in yet.
Correct.
Good Lord. Let's play for the Marlins.
I'm trying to go through there. They beat us in the World Series. I'm trying to think, was there anyone on that team that's in the Hall of Fame now?
I know Beckett didn't get in. Sheffield's not in.
5 players.
Like,
the inductees into the Hall of Fame were in 2010, 2016, Pudge in 2017, another person in 2017, and 2018. I will give you a hint for a couple of them, because I feel like you guys are going to struggle with these. They were tough. I only got 2 off the top of my head without any hints. Credit to Adrian for the trivia question. And if anyone wants to throw some in the chat, have fun.
Recent Marlins to...
I wish it was Jeff Conine, but no, Jeff Conine's not in the Hall of Fame.
No. I'm trying to think of like all the good players on those teams. Like Juan Pierre's not in the Hall of Fame.
Nope. One is
Dontrell's not in the Hall of Fame.
No.
Well, I'll start giving hints. One is a primary player for a team that's in our division that played his whole career there. You know him for 1 team, but he played 1 season with the Marlins, and he plays the same position as Ivan Rodriguez. He was the other primary catcher in that era.
Who caught for them?
Just 1 year.
Piazza didn't play for them, did he?
That is correct. Mike Piazza. That's two. Another one is a premier closer that closed for them for 3 years, 2 years. But he's known for one team. You would think of him just for one team. You wouldn't think of him as a Marlin, but he's a premier closer.
They have a couple of good closers.
One of the best ones ever.
One of the best ever.
Yeah. 100% one of the best ever.
Hoffman didn't play there, did he?
That's correct, Trevor Hoffman. So you got 3 now. The other 2 are very tough. I mean, this is end of their career playing, and one of them had 423 home runs. I'll give you that hint.
So I figured there's going to be a couple of these.
423.
These are the guys I was trying to think of. 423.
438. Sorry, 438 home runs.
Doesn't make it much better. It's very odd.
He only played 2 years with the Florida Marlins. He played 10 years with the Montreal Expos, 6 years with the Chicago Cubs, and 2 years with the Boston Red Sox. He finished his career in Florida, 95 and 96.
Oh, yeah. For my time.
Yeah. It's a tough one.
The Expos.
Yep.
And the
Both
and the
of
other?
them played for the Expos.
Oh, wait.
Both of them primarily played for the Expos. Both of them that are left.
That's Larry Walker.
No.
Who was his I work for the Colorado Rockies. Who was his predominant team? Expos and who else?
Montreal and Chicago Cubs.
Andre Dawson.
That's correct. Andre Dawson is the 400 home run hitter, and there's one more.
Good job. You contributing to this discussion at all or not?
No. For my time. Trevor Hoffman, I could have gave you Trevor Hoffman, but
he was a 7-time All-Star for the Montreal Expos in the 80s, 81 to 87.
See, it's like high school Bill here. You should remember.
And he went to the Chicago White Sox for 5 seasons. That's where I most know him from.
Harold Baines.
Come on, bro.
Tim Raines. Sorry, Tim Raines.
That's correct. Tim Raines. Said Harold Baines.
Fun, I think, though.
I'll give one each week. I don't mind. I love trivia. Trivia's fun.
That was a good one. Give Ed credit for that one. That's a good one.
The World Baseball Classic.
Fantastic.
It was incredible, man. It was so much fun to watch. Well, every game you were like, this is the best game we've watched. My favorite game was the well, can't say it was my favorite game because I wanted them to lose. But the best game in the whole tournament, I think, was Japan-Mexico.
That was really good. I think for the rivalry aspect and
USA-Cuba.
That one was good. And then also the DR Puerto Rico game, which was a winner kind of loser.
Winner go home.
That
was probably my favorite. And I will say
kudos for having that game in Miami, because that stadium was bonkers for that game. Bonkers.
Insanity. This is the most fans they've ever had in that stadium.
Yeah, it was overshadowed because of what happened at the end. But that for me, I think was probably my most favorite game to watch, because the atmosphere and all the fans in that stadium, how bad they wanted their respective teams to win. Like that game, everybody in that stadium took that game to heart, and that's what made that game special.
I'll say this: Venezuela versus the United States got me the most fired up. Venezuela was winning that game, and they were 100% like, yo, look, dude, shit talk's one thing. Showing people up on a mound with a ton of different, I felt like that pitcher would get thrown out in the head if they were playing and he was in that lineup for Venezuela when he struck out I think he struck out Kyle Tucker, and he basically put the sword away and was gesturing to the American dugout, and then Trey Turner hits that grand slam after JT Realmuto gets hit. That game was so wild. And you could see the fans going nuts, the deflated fans after everything that happened. It was a really fun World Baseball Classic. I want to ask you guys a question. Obviously, Japan won. It's a sour note. I don't think that the pitching mattered for that game. We lost 3-2. I think we did.
We left a gazillion people on base.
100%. So my question that I would ask you guys, well, two questions, and one of them I hate asking, but I have to ask. But how many wins do you think the Japanese national team would have if they were just plop that full team into Major League Baseballs?
What
division?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I mean, they're gonna do all right. I
think they win the World Series.
No,
100%.
Nah. The pitching rules almost benefited them
100%
with the way they could use people, because you could bring Shohei back, you bring Darvish back, stuff like that. If you're playing in Major League Baseball, you're getting those guys once every 5 days. Those other pitchers they have are not going to. They're not going to put up the numbers they put up in Japan against some of these lineups. Like, you put that team in the National League East or the AL East, stuff like that. Those 3, 4, and 5 pitchers are going to get roughed up sometimes. I think they compete for a playoff. I wouldn't be shocked to make the playoffs. I would make them a playoff team.
How many wins? Give me a number. I completely disagree with you.
High. I would say like 92, 94 is probably their cap.
Okay.
I agree with the number. 94 was kind of where I was thinking, but I'm kind of confused on, you say like I think 94 wins. I think they'd be fine going to the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I think they make the playoffs. I just don't think they win the World Series.
Okay. I think they.
How many do you have?
I think they win 112 games and win the World Series.
Oh my God.
They would wear teams down. Their patience at the plate is unbelievable. They have a 3, 4, 5 hitters that are it'd be 3 of the best hitters in baseball immediately. Their pitching staff's absurd. I'm sorry, man. They have Yu Darvish, they have Shohei Ohtani, and the kid that started for them last night. They have 2 relievers that throw 97 to 100. They have a stud-packed team. I don't think there'd be any doubt in my mind. I think that they would win 112 games and win the World Series.
112 would make them like the
one of
third
the most
best teams ever. That they're not.
I think they would be. Kyle just said, I can't wait to watch Yoshida in Boston this season. That kid's a monster. How about the Japanese Babe Ruth? Kid batted 5th, hit that monster home run. He's not eligible to come over for a year or two. There's so many guys in that lineup that are just.
It's funny that you say that. You say the Japanese Babe Ruth, and you're not actually talking about Shohei. Like, it's crazy to think about.
Right?
It is. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a misleading nickname because obviously Shohei is literally what Babe Ruth was at the beginning of his career.
But Babe Ruth didn't stop pitching at 25.
He did.
He's 28.
My point is the other guy doesn't pitch at all. That's my point.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
Listen, the Japanese league is very good, but you're plucking guys that are like, you're taking Shohei and people like that are coming over and doing well. They are like standouts of that league. The average guy over there, you got to remember it too. Like you said, pitching didn't hurt us.
It's not the average guy; it's the national team.
Okay, calm down. Okay. You also have to realize they're not seeing that pitching day in and day out in Japan, and they didn't really see it so much day in and day out in this tournament either. You go put them in the East, where they're going to see a Zach Wheeler every week, or an Aaron Nola, or Scherzer, or a Verlander. Their numbers are going to dip. They are not seeing that pitching every single night in Japan. They're just not.
Okay.
But it's, again, I think they're very good. They'd be a very good team. I think they make the playoffs. I'm not crowning them the 3rd or 4th best team ever in the history of baseball and handing them a World Series. I think 162 games is a long season. It's more than they play. There's a lot that goes into it, man. A lot. I fully agree with you. They'd be very good. They make the playoffs. I'm not going to the World Series, especially with some of the teams that are in Major League Baseball right now.
Okay. Listen, it's an opinionated question. I just want your opinion. The second question I would ask you is, and I have to ask it. I don't like asking it, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
This better not be what I think it is.
It is. Is Mike Trout overrated? And
I'm not discussing this. You guys can. I'm not.
And we'll take it a step further. Is he not clutch?
So he's not clutch because he missed 102, 100, and then an 87-mile-per-hour slider that caught the itty-bitty corner on the outside at his knee, which is almost an impossible pitch for hit to anybody that's right-handed. So now all of a sudden, the guy that hit 40 home runs last year in 112 games is overrated and not clutch because he didn't hit Shohei.
I'm not saying I agree with this, but
I disagree with it. One asshole on Twitter agreed with it.
It's a headline for ESPN.
I didn't see it on ESPN. I was on ESPN all day. I didn't say
Mike Trout was 1 for 5 with 3 strikeouts last night. He batted .296 in the World Baseball Classic.
Okay. And going into last night, he was
far from the best player on the American roster. This for the World Baseball Classic.
He was third to Trey Turner, who was insanely hot, and I don't know who else you want to go with. So he got outperformed by Trey Turner in
Arenado.
What was Arenado last night? 0 for 4?
1 for 3 with a walk.
Okay. Going into last night's game, he was batting 3. Again, he only had, 15, 16 at-bats going into last night?
He batted 385 for the Classic. So he's batting 400 going into last night.
There you go. So what the hell are we talking about?
I'm talking about Arenado. I'm not talking about Trout.
Trout was 348 going into last night. I know he was. And he was second in slugging and OPS behind everybody not named Trey Turner. So what are we talking about?
I get it. I look.
It's dumb. I'm not giving time to it because I'm not going to use the R word, but that's what it is. Nobody who are you putting in the box that you're telling me you have more confidence to hit him in that situation?
I mean, after last night, I can't say Goldschmidt because Goldschmidt couldn't hit anything last night at all. But I mean, a fastball hitter, I would probably say Schwarber.
102. And I'll tell you who's not hitting that slider is Kyle Schwarber.
That's fair. I don't think he's hitting the slider, but he might have hit the fastball.
I mean, I think the other thing too, though, is, I mean, we talk about Trout. I mean, if Mookie doesn't hit into the double play and there's still a runner on base, maybe Shohei pitches to Trout a little bit differently. Knowing that I know it's only a 1-run game, but in a sense, like, you're not playing to necessarily lose at that point. Like, you can't give up a home run to Trout and that loses you the World Baseball Classic. It's just, if it's just Trout,
102 right down the middle of the plate. I agree.
He did. Yep. That's not happening.
He threw 100, 102. And again, you're right, though. If Mookie's even on base there, he's not throwing that slider. Because if he throws that slider into the ball, now you have 2 guys on with 1 out. He's not doing that. So does he throw another fastball past Trout? Maybe. I mean, 102 is hard to hit. 102 with movement is hard to hit for anybody.
Yep.
That being said, it just changes the dynamic of the game. You look at Trout's swing. Trout swung fastball there. And if you're going to hit 102 when you were barely behind it your first 2 pitches, that's what you have to do. I'm just sick of all the things saying, oh, if this guy was in the box or if this or this or this. Like,
I don't think if anybody was in the box. I actually think the Americans lost that game when Trey Turner got on base and JT Realmuto and Cedric Mullins swung first pitch and didn't give him an opportunity to steal second base. I think that's where they lost the game. I really believe that.
That, and again, when McNeil took that pitch and got on, I was like, there you go, first guy on.
And they put Bobby Witt Jr. to run. They gave him no opportunity to steal the base. Mookie Betts swung right away.
Correct. Mookie Betts swung second pitch. It hit a freaking 2-hopper literally right to the second base.
Weakest 2-hopper I've seen Mookie Betts hit in 10 years.
And then,
seriously.
No, it was definitely one of those, like, I'm sure a lot of people in Europe
tailor-made. Like, if you've seen that ball off the bat, you're like, oh, it's a double play. Like, you knew.
Yeah.
Zero thought process that ball was doing anything besides a double play.
They had him shaded there and everything. He literally hit the ball right to the second baseman.
Correct.
2-hopper at his waist. I mean, nothing you can do. I mean, listen, when you have a guy throwing that hard, that's what happens. I mean, I'm not engaging in the other junk. I'm not. I mean,
I get it. I have to ask a question.
I get it. I mean, I think if anything, I don't think anybody looked more pissed off after that at bat than he did. If anything, I think it's going to motivate him. So,
oh yeah, I'm sure he's gonna have to hear about it for the next, the rest of this year, most likely. I mean, unless Shohei gets moved, so he's gonna hear about it for sure. Plus, I mean, the country's behind you and all that.
Is there any
So of
player
course,
in Major League Baseball that's even close to Shohei Ohtani?
I mean, listen, Shohei, and this isn't a fault against him, but like he is as valuable as he is because he's, I don't want to say double dipping, because he's doing both, and that almost makes him untouchable. I mean, you look at his numbers last year; like his numbers went down offensively a little bit. His average went down, but his pitching numbers went up, and
wild.
Go ahead.
Shohei Ohtani in this World Baseball Classic. This is so absurd. Hit the longest home run, threw the fastest pitch, hit the hardest ball off the bat, and there was one other thing. It's the fastest ball thrown, the hardest hit off the bat, the longest home run hit, and it was something else. There's 4 things, but I mean, the guy's insane.
He's insane. He's the best player in baseball right now. I mean, you can't match his.
I was asking, is anybody's close?
It's hard to quantify. That's what I'm saying. Like I'll put it to you this way:
anybody close to being as valuable as Shohei Ohtani for one season?
There isn't anybody because he does both.
Agreed.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, there's nobody that could touch him because of what he adds as a pitcher right now. If he's just pitching or if he's just hitting, he's not in the MVP conversation in either regard. But when
hitting, I mean, he was really close to year when him and Vlad, they were Vlad had ridiculous.
That year, you look at last year, he would have finished 5th or 6th if he wasn't pitching.
Agreed.
I was gonna say you got Judge hitting 60+ home runs and hitting basically for the Triple Crown. Like that's gonna be tough to overcome.
But that's what it's gonna take. It took an absolute historic year from Aaron Judge to win MVP. Yeah. If he continues to keep pitching and hitting at the pace that he is, I think eventually he's going to have to give it up. And I think you saw it a little bit last year, and they talked about it a lot at the WBC. He got really tired at the end of last year because the year previous he kept hitting as well because they shut him down pitching wise.
Yeah,
and he was getting rest and he was just DHing. You saw the wear and tear on it at the end of last year, and you saw his average dip down to where it did. He lost power numbers. At some point, he's probably going to have to choose. I don't know if that's going to be next year, the year after, or whatever. He's 100% going to get traded this year. I am excited to see what somebody gives up for him because it is going to be the most astronomical haul you've ever seen a baseball player traded for.
Could you see him move to the bullpen?
Well, like a closer role like he did last night?
Not even necessarily closer, but like just that being an extra guy that if you're
going to move him to the bullpen, he's going to be your closer. That's what you're going to ramp him up to do.
You're not going to throw.
I don't see him closing out like 40 games every year. So I'm saying I would imagine him being more of a setup guy.
No, you're not going to do that. That defeats the purpose. At that point, you would just throw him as a starter until his arm fell off. You have no value in that. You could condition him to be a closer. He pitches 3 or 4 nights a week, and he can throw as hard as he can for 1 inning. That's what you get out of him.
For sure.
That's easy. Could I see that because it's probably a little bit less, rigorous for him? Yeah. But I mean, we'll see. He's young, so I mean, again, I think it's he is adamant that he wants to continue to do both, and I think until you see one side, either the pitching or the hitting completely fall off, somebody's going to pay him $50 million to do it, and he deserves every penny of it right now.
Well, let's get into you got to be kidding me, gentlemen. Cottrell?
I'm very, very disappointed to share that I don't have one this week. Nobody's grinded my gears. Nothing's come out to upset me, so I got nothing this week.
I'm going to go one that didn't piss me off per se. It's more upsetting to me, and it's Tony Mitchell at Alabama. You would think after what we saw a couple weeks ago with Jalen Carter, You would think somebody would. You would hope somebody would pay attention and learn. Tony Mitchell got arrested last week for driving around in a car again that I don't think he necessarily probably should have had. Doing 141 miles per hour, got pulled over with 7 grams of weed and a handgun in the car. It's a 4-star kid, 5-star by some sanctions, playing in Alabama, projected starter for next year, going to have every opportunity to go to the league and earn a bunch of money, man. And I will tell you the way this one's shaking out, he's probably never going to play for Alabama again. If you watched Nick Saban's press conference yesterday, he held zero back, put all the blame at the kid's feet, said he really didn't want to hear any of the excuses because none of them fit the situation. And it's hard to argue it. 141 isn't getting a speed ticket.
No.
That's you running from cops, and you're running from cops because you had drugs. Oh, they had $7,000 cash in the car. Any cop in the world, a good cop, bad cop, straight cop, crooked cop, whatever you want to call it, is going to look at that guy and be like, these guys are dealing drugs. There's no other conclusion you can really come to at that point. You're in a car that was given to you as part of your NIL. I don't think you need to be dealing drugs or riding around with your homie with a gun that was licensed to him. He's saying it's not his now. Whole thing's messy, man. I would say this. It gets old watching kids make these mistakes when they're in the spotlight and potentially, throwing their careers away. Is this, the end all be all for him? No. But like I said, I don't think he's going to play at Alabama. I think he's going to get dismissed from Alabama once he finally gets charged and he pleads to whatever he pleads to. They're not going to keep him there. Nick Saban's not. So he's going to go play somewhere else. So, you threw away from, if not number one, the number 2 pro factory for kids going to the league. I just want these kids to have somebody around, and I want these kids in general to make better decisions. I think it's just upsetting. It's upsetting because it's starting to happen too often, and these kids have too much to lose, and it's just somebody, it have to be the parents, the coaches, teammates, friends, whoever. Just grab a hold of these kids and be like, dude, like this, you don't have to do this. Like, it's just crazy and out of hand. It's just sad to see because like I said, it's kids making mistakes that are affecting their lives. So for me, for this week, that would be it for me.
Come on, you gotta be kidding me.
Mine's going to be a little bit more direct, a little bit more. You're going to be surprised at mine. I'll tell you this way. I'm going to ask you guys a question. Do you guys know who my favorite player in the NBA is that's not a 76er?
I already know where this is going, probably. I would say Ja.
Correct. So you'd expect me to be pro Ja on a lot of things. The NBA is my you got to be kidding me this week because I really feel like, and I'm going to put this out there and I'm going to be very direct about it. I really feel like they swept a lot under the rug with Ja Morant. They have a suspension rule that if a gun is found on a team plane or a team facility, that you'll be suspended a minimum 50 games. There's no way Ja Morant had a gun on him, but did not have it in a team facility. They were on the road when it happened. They were not home. So there's no way to just gun was just handed to them there, right? So it had to get there where he was at. So that's one. Second part of it is this whole rehabilitation thing where they suspended him and then the next night he was in the strip club with $50,000 thrown on strippers. Like what lesson is he learning? What did 8 games teach Ja Morant? Lost a lot of money because he's not going to make all NBA and he's going to lose a ton of money. You're not going to get a super max for that. But if we're being honest about it, right? If that was, let's just be real for a minute, right? If that was DeAnthony Melton, what do you think would have happened?
Yeah, I think he'd be done for the year.
And no questions asked, right?
No.
Even if it was Marcus Smart.
Marcus probably because of his past, yeah.
My point being is the NBA really kind of slid through with this John Morant situation, and it's wrong. You got to teach a kid a lesson. I'm a John Morant fan. There's nobody who wants to watch him play basketball more than I do. I love watching him play. I think he's incredibly talented. I think he's a superstar. It was one bad choice after another bad choice. He's beating up a kid, flashing a gun to a 17-year-old. There was like 7 things, man. It wasn't one thing. Threatened a 15-year-old, punched a 17-year-old, flashed a gun to a group of kids in the public, showed a gun on Instagram, was at the strip club the day after he got suspended, like spending $50,000, showing zero remorse for what happened. I'm not saying it's illegal to go to the strip club. I understand that, but that's not where you should be the day after you're suspended from the NBA for showing a gun on Instagram.
I mean, again, I think a little bit factors in even like what mine was. I think you have to have somebody around you that like constantly just has your back with good intentions, not has his back because of what he's going to give him or what he's going to get from him, but has his back.
Been around him his entire life. And I feel like this man needs, like, I really believe someone just needs to sit him down in a room and be like, bro, you don't, even if you were about that street life, even if you were, even if your dad was, even if that's the way you're raised, you don't need to be about that life anymore.
No.
You're a multi-million-dollar superstar in the NBA, and you're going to give it all up to be stupid. Why are you hitting? Listen, I said this the other day on Cheap Seats, and I'll say it again here, right? I will go to an NBA game when Russell Westbrook plays the 76ers, get as close as humanly possible to the court and yell Westbrook the entire game, hoping he will walk over and punch me in the face, because that's a lottery ticket. No, I don't mean to be a smart ass when I say it. There's a point behind what I'm saying. What does a 17-year-old have to say to you to get you to punch him at a court? Like, why do you have to prove you're a tough guy or you have credit? Why do you put yourself in that situation to flash a gun to kids? And then you put it on Instagram. Like, what are you doing?
If there's any bright spot for him, it's now he's, for lack of a better term, gotten away with 2 strikes without any kind of
repercussions.
With any kind of serious repercussions. I will give him credit with this. I watched both of his interviews the other day. He seemed very contrite. He seemed very humbled. I'm hoping his dad was involved in that, and he said, it's not a drinking thing. He point blank said, he's like, I have to make better decisions. And, some certain things were really drilled into my head, what I have worth of losing and stuff like that. So, I mean, again, it's everybody gets the chance to make mistakes. Everybody, especially athletes, if anybody else, gets opportunities to redeem themselves and learn from them. So, I mean, you would hope a guy who, again, me and Cottrell talked about this a little bit, is debatably going to be one of the faces of the league.
Fact.
For the next 10 years. You hope he learns from it and moves on. I think he got very lucky that the NBA couldn't prove that he took that gun on the plane. And
you don't need to prove it. How did you get it across state lines?
If you say it's somebody else's, then that's the easy way out, because at that point, then the NBA has to prove you took that gun on the plane. And they couldn't, and they knew they would lose an arbitration. So at that point, why smear the kid, even though if that is probably what happened?
I get it.
They lose in the public at that point, and they lose against Ja at that point.
I disagree. They lose in the public. I agree. They lose against Ja. I think the public opinion is with me on this, and I'm a Ja fan.
I'm with you, Gene. I even said it last week. I used Ja as my "you got to be kidding me." I said it should. No, it's all good, because I was kind of on a different. You
did it differently.
Basically how I put it was, the NBA, they had 2 choices here. If you're going to give Josh a slap on the wrist, give him a slap on the wrist and stand by it. Don't come out later and say, oh, we're giving him the 8 games now because of we found this and found that. If you're going to do it from the beginning. You had all this stuff in front of you to begin with. Or outright just say, hey, we are giving Ja 50 games. We did our research. He broke all these rules. He's getting 50 games. That's that. either give them everything up front or you give them your 2-game suspension because you didn't want to do all the research. Don't try to save face now.
I'll be willing to bet you he'll start next season on the suspension list. I'll be willing to bet you they wait until after the NBA playoffs, couple more things come out, and he gets a 20-game suspension start next year. I feel it in my gut, and I hope I'm wrong because I feel like what they're doing right now is they're saving face because he's a face of the league and he's a young budding star. And for that reason, Ja Morant and the NBA.
Come on, you gotta be kidding me.
Fun show, gentlemen. Fun show. Good to be back. I missed it last week. To anybody that's listening, I'm trying to do my best to get the audio and upload it for last week so I can upload both shows at the same time. Last week's show was primarily, I'm almost through it, was primarily bracket talk. It was about an hour and 55 minutes of pre-bracket talk. So I'm almost debating to myself if it's worth putting out. But I guess we'll put it out and you can download it if you want. This episode will be available tonight. So to people that have messaged me all week, I apologize. I was on a ship. Cottrell didn't have the Lipson logins to download it to his audio. So it's on me. I'll take full responsibility for it. I went on vacation, so I apologize. But I appreciate you guys messaging me, asking about the last week's episode. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
I got nothing.
Well, I appreciate that. So for me, the NFL genius, for College Cottrell, for Uncle Shally, thank you for tuning in to Wire2Wire Sports Podcast, episode 128. We are signing out.